All right, does it get off my lawn if I already want the fireworks to stop?
It's funny that you say that. In the East End, they've been going off every night for the last 2 weeks. so I'm used to it on my side. But yes, you're right.
There's like a 2 week.
Enough. Ugh.
There's
So,
a 2
so
week
it's not get off my
buffer
lawn.
zone.
We can bound together as parents of young kids, especially, right? Come on now, that's louder than the sound machine.
Well, I mean, for me, really, just for me, it's not even that. For me, it's
You have
the
dogs
dog.
too,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
I have one dog that thinks it's an absolute war zone out there.
Sure.
So yeah,
sure.
I mean, it's going to be a long week. Get to your vets early in the week and get the magic pill that zonks them out for 8 hours.
You need it for like
works.
the next 2 weeks because people are like, I still got some sparklers
No
here.
kidding.
Nothing says sports radio like the endorsement for the magic pill by about 7:01 here.
Well, I did text.
in the morning.
I did text a neighbor. I'm like, it's our first 4th of July. I notice there's a lot of fireworks, and he goes, "Oh, that's just a Glock. Don't worry about it." Fair enough. I'm kidding, of course. Good morning.
Not sure if I should laugh or cry.
No,
at
look
that.
at you. You're all Notre Dame down today. Is that a Notre Dame hat or is that a Pacer hat?
Pacer hat.
Oh,
a
Pacer
little
hat.
throwback.
Okay.
Yeah,
I like that.
I got the throwback wardrobe on here. The
I
old
like
school
that.
Notre Dame baseball jersey. A happy start to July. It is July 1 here on this Monday morning. Thank you for spending it with us, Kevin Bowen, Andy Sweeney, and Mark Dykton coming at you on what I think has kind of been a bit of an annual, hey, the sports calendar, July 1 means, boom, NBA free agency. Here we go. And what fireworks come off of that, I would say league-wide, rather quiet so far. Granted, we did have a Paul George bomb to share with you in the wee hours of Monday morning. And are we done with the Pacers? Like, is this it? I mean, this is now Run It Back has been ink to paper with the Obi Toppin news from yesterday?
Yeah, I mean, they still have the mid-level exception that is out there. I really think, though, it's going to be, with Obi Toppin coming back. And, I mean, this is the same thing as Pascal Siakam, that they got it done rather fast, did they not? I mean, that's how I view it with Obi Toppin. We never sat here. I thought we might get today as a show to where other teams would be connected to Obi Toppin. Did you think we would sit here on Monday morning and have it being over with and for 4 years,
Yeah, it's a good question.
$60 million? I mean, you look at Klay Thompson's got, 2, 3 teams, 4 teams that are looking at him, but Obi got his money. I know we can dive into that. Probably what's left is, does Andrew Nemhard want to gamble on himself and then them giving TJ McConnell more money? That's probably where we are today.
Yeah, it's kind of a rarity, frankly, in professional sports to see a team opt for, and I would say especially the NBA. I mean, the NBA, you almost, again, annually have some sort of movement on your roster, and really the Pacers are not going to have that. I guess, Jalen Smith is probably the guy that's played the most minutes from last season that will not be here as he declined that player option there late Friday after we had signed off. So that will certainly be a big topic for us here on this Monday morning. Obi Toppin back. Jalen Smith, in all likelihood, is gone. What does it mean for Jarris Walker? What does the Paul George to the Sixers move mean for the Eastern Conference? 4 years, $212 million. Again, that was in the wee hours of this morning here as Paul George heads to Philadelphia there. Eric Gordon finding another home with the Sixers as well. So a 17th season for the North Central product. And we'll take a closer look at Summer League as the Pacers a little over a week away from that as they will head to Vegas for Summer League, which Jarris Walker, as Chad Buchanan confirmed with us on Friday, he will be a part of the Summer League roster.
Yeah, I tend to think, and we can dive into Jarris Walker, I'm not sure how many fans care, quite frankly, about, okay, you bring back Obi Toppin. Well, he's better. He's ready to play. And does that mean Jarris Walker doesn't play? Can you play them both together? I think it's a possibility that we can dive into. Now, you mentioned, Paul George signs with Philly, as does, a 2-year deal, as does Andre Drummond. So both of those guys sign with Philly. That puts Philly second right now in odds you can actually bet on the different apps. It puts them as second in the East right now.
Above New York?
It does, yeah. Puts them, right now, New York is plus 450 to win the Eastern Conference, and Philly is plus 400. So it's not that big of a difference. But right now, you wake up with the move of Paul George, the move of Andre Drummond. I would imagine they're probably not done. Kelly Oubre comes back. Philly right now is second in the East.
Well, and
Have
again,
fun.
I think this is a topic we can get into today of, how do you view the East right now? And at times, I sit here, I'm like, man, the Pacers got to the Eastern Conference Finals. I mean, that just came out of nowhere, and what a huge development for the franchise, et cetera, et cetera. But I have to remind myself, like, Philly had the same exact record as Indiana this year, and Joel Embiid missed 45 games.
Right.
And I know Embiid is not, the beacon of, 82-game seasons, but he does not miss, 45. If you look at his recent track record, I mean, he is not missing that many amount of games on an annual basis. So, I feel like at times, and I apologize for it, I want to say last week when the Knicks made their kind of flurry of Mikal Bridges and then boom, what they did with OG Anunoby and re-signing them, I kind of said, all right, tier 1 is Boston, boom, tier 2 is New York, and then you group Indiana and Cleveland and those, and Milwaukee. I almost forgot about Philly. And I probably shouldn't have done that with what Tyrese Maxey did last season. And I don't think Paul George is walking up the 18th hole. I still think Paul George has got a little bit of juice left in that tank. I don't think it's 5 years of it.
I was about to say, is he on 16?
Yeah,
where's he at?
But again,
maybe 15.
If you're Philly and you can get 2 to 3 good years out of Paul George, and you've got Maxey and Embiid, I mean, you don't need much more. So certainly, that was probably the big firework. I mean, unless I'm missing DeJounte Murray, I don't. Maybe we'll see more of it today, but it seems like I know we had a lot of stuff pre-free agency, but it seems like a rather quiet start given the NBA's usual firework nature.
Well, isn't that the point that this free agent class is just okay? I mean, don't
you still see like trades?
Yeah,
and
usually you see a little bit more action.
I don't know. I feel like we usually get a little bit more than we've gotten so far.
I almost texted you this last night because I am, and we'll get to Obi Toppin here in a second, I am very conflicted on Paul George. I actually thought, ESPN was on before we came on here at 7 o'clock. And I thought Evan Cohen actually was spot on. He's like, he made the point of this is a move Philly had to make, but it doesn't feel like for all 4 years it's going to be that good of a deal. And that's kind of how I feel about Paul George. He's not on 18, but he's on the back 9. He's probably on 15. Now, last year, Paul George played 74 games. So I am not hating on Paul George last year. That's a substantial number in today's NBA. But the, 4 years before then, he is seriously injured. You're talking about playing 31 games, 54, 48, 58. So he's missed a good chunk of time. And I don't have the connection, to this area. I know Paul George, beloved here, and then at times hated here, obviously, when he left.
I'd say more hated than beloved.
Yeah,
I mean, not my opinion necessarily, but just summarizing Pacers fans.
I'm not a Paul George guy.
Right.
And I say that knowing Philly sitting there in a win-now mode that they had to make, a move. I understood why they made the move, but I see, Paul George is a very good player at the end of his career. There's a great chance, he is. He's going to be a Hall of Fame level player, but I don't know. I mean, to me, he goes to Philly, and that's a big move. And I know it moved the betting lines. To me, it just doesn't move the needle for me as much as it probably moves it for many of those in the NBA. And I say that knowing Philly had to do something, KB. They had to.
July on the calendar means NFL training camps will take place this month. We'll continue our Colts question of the day. It is wild. I feel like every time I get to July, I'm like, damn, we're 3 weeks away.
Football's around the corner.
3 weeks from what? Tomorrow? Is that report day? The 24th?
The 24th.
So 3 weeks from Wednesday.
Well, it's Christmas Eve for Andy Sweeney, isn't it? Because the Giants HBO Hard Knocks series
tomorrow.
premieres tomorrow.
I did watch the trailer. They're like, we're not done building a team. Well, yeah, you won 6 games or whatever it was last year. Yeah.
Fill me in because
kidding.
This is going to be an off-season version. Malik Neighbors, Saquon Barkley gone. What did I miss?
Brian Burns, the trade to get Brian Burns.
I forgot about Brian Burns.
Yeah, that was a big one. Yeah. I mean, they should have a good defensive line.
So this is just like
that's about it.
Cameras in the building during like free agency and the draft.
I would imagine that's
program.
It. Yeah, I would imagine that's it. Yeah.
Got it. And this is going to be every Tuesday now for the next
Yeah, I mean,
number of
the
weeks?
NFL, they give you a little behind-the-scenes stuff, and it's a drug. That's what it is.
Sure.
It's just a drug.
It's
you
the
never
magic
get to,
pill.
Yeah, it's a magic pill. You never get to see this sort of stuff. By the way, Alex Golden going to join us in the 9 o'clock hour. Your takeaway, Obi Toppin, done and done pretty damn fast. That's what the Pacers have done now a couple times here in the last couple weeks.
Yeah, I will once again commend Chad. Gosh, I feel like do I need to start with saying Chad Buchanan before Kevin Pritchard? I know it's like maybe of a different topic, but I'm always kind of torn on like where we're at right now, the Pacers hierarchy and who's calling the shots over there. But nonetheless, praise Pacers management for these sorts of, and I hate to even say chances, because like to me, like even the trade for Jalen Smith was so low risk. Why not take a shot on a former lottery pick with, Torrey Craig and a second-round pick? And was it 2 seconds for Obi Toppin? Like, those types of trades, saying to, these players, hey, we're going to give you a change of scenery. We're going to believe in you. We're going to show you, in all likelihood, a little bit more playing time, a different role, and hopefully it'll be the wake-up call that you need. It worked out brilliantly with Toppin. Even if, like, he would have walked, I still would have been like, man, you got a really nice season out of Obi Toppin. He shot it really well. I'll never forget, really, this time last year, Miles Turner out at Summer League. You know how the players, do the in-game interviews frequently in these Summer League games. And Turner, the first thing he said about Toppin's like, man, we just came from a team workout here in Vegas, and I can't believe how well he shoots it. Typically you get the stereotype of the high flyer. They can't throw it in the ocean. Toppin can really shoot it. So his ability to mesh certainly on the floor and getting out in space and running with TJ McConnell and company in that second unit, all of that checks. To me, 4 for 60 seems pretty reasonable. I think I had kind of been a little bit more of a, wait, somebody's going to offer him either more or more playing time. And he seems to be content with, where he's at here. But I think I still have the same question that I threw to Chad Buchanan on Friday. You've paid a 6'9" guy major money in Siakam. You've paid a 6'9" guy notable money in Toppin, and they're not helping you immensely defensively. So that's still my question of it's run it back as a negative stereotype. I think it's unfair to label the Pacers as the 31 and 32-year-old run it backs. Like, that's not them. But where are you getting better defensively? And how or if or where, however you want to throw it, does Jarace Walker fit into all of this? Because seemingly on paper, he's the one in-house guy where you look at him and think he's the one we've always talked about him defensively. Okay, where does that puzzle fit?
Do you think Jarace Walker can play alongside Obi Toppin? I'm asking that on top of this. How much should we care about Jarace Walker? And now, that's coming from me, who I like Jarace Walker. Yeah. I have been leading the charge here of, I think this guy has something, and I know he's going to play in Summer League. When we had Buchanan on Friday, KB said, we want him to play like the big guy that he is. And that's one of the things.
Forceful was the word Chad
forceful.
used.
I think, that's exactly the verbiage that he used. You look at Obi, you look at Jarace Walker, he's a big guy. He left college and came to the NBA, and that was a pro that was on his side. I guess I'm conflicted here because I want to see Jarace Walker, but Jarace also has to earn the right to be on the floor. And I would imagine right now where we sit going into the summer, into the NBA offseason, that quite frankly, Jarace has not earned that right. And he entered the league as a rookie. That's a little bit different than some rookies that are, they're playing 20-plus minutes and might be starting and everything else. So I am kind of split here on, do Pacer fans care, or how much do they care about the Jarace Walker conversation? Does that make sense?
Yeah. First off, I think you would be foolish not to care about a lottery pick that seemingly, first off, he's a lottery pick. I mean, that's a major investment for your franchise, particularly when at some point in an ideal world, you're passing the torch from Siakam to him. I mean, that's, it might not be for several years down the road, but, what's the Siakam deal? 4 years?
Mm-hmm.
So, you would think on the back end of that, again, in a perfect world, you're passing it to the 23-year-old Jarace Walker or whatever his age would be. And, again, defensively, that's where that question rises for me, because I think you can look at it on paper and think New York especially, and maybe in Philadelphia, I mean, they've risen in their, potency, ceiling, however you want to describe it. They still, in Philly's case, they got to stay healthy. In the Knicks' case, they just got to make sure the Villanova thing continues to mesh well. But, those teams have kind of risen in that. For the Pacers to rise in it, it's going to be so much of that internal growth. And I know that's not sexy. And again, I don't think it is the same old as even like when you ran it back a decade ago with, West and Hibbert and Paul and, George Hill and those guys, that was a little bit more of an aging group. Certainly not Paul, but some of those other guys. Yeah, even this one, I don't think it's there, but I am just fascinated, frankly, to see Jarace Walker's development. And, where, you said it earlier, could he play next to Obi Toppin? These are good problems to have, but it's like, okay, if he's playing next to Obi Toppin, that puts him at the 3. Is that putting Matherin at the 2 and then Shepard's out?
Right.
Again, how does all of that play out? Great problems to have. Inevitably, you're going to have some injuries that probably will lead to some of these guys, inserting into the picture. And, in the back of my mind, I think there is a little bit of the Pacers. Maybe this is not their frontline thinking, but it's there. You're going to let this group play for 50-some games, and then you're going to get to the trade deadline. And now what happens then? Again, you've got a first-round pick that's now in the picture at that point. Do you look for the win-now move? But I do think it is surprising to me of all the stuff you've done this offseason, whether it be the 3 second-round picks or what you've done so far, I think to me you're still lacking that big wing defender. I mean, even, Chad Buchanan has said, at times, Andrew Nembhard and Aaron Nesmith, they're just not big enough necessarily to guard the Middletons and the Tatums and the Browns and theoretically now the Paul Georges of the Eastern Conference. So that question to me remains. And I think if you're going to be a team that is annually pushing deep into the month of May and potentially further, that question's got to be there. Because, again, if you look at Boston's 4 series in the playoffs, they were the best offensive team against you, and it wasn't close. If you look at Miami and you look at Cleveland and you look at Dallas as well. Just answering that call.
How is it answered?
Walker?
Yeah, how is it answered? I just don't know.
If you listen to Chad's answer to that question on Friday, it's more of just, we need guys to get to an extra loose ball. We need guys to, grab another rebound. I'm okay. I get that. But, at the end of the day, with how this league oftentimes works, it's you've got to have a dog on that perimeter that can stop some of this dribble penetration. So, again, where all of that plays out, I think will be really interesting to see. And I'm looking forward to seeing Jarace Walker in Summer League. I know some people will poo-poo what the Summer League is all about, but, Andrew Nembhard had a very impressive, albeit short stint in Summer League last year as a second-year player. How much did he parlay that into, what he was all about this past season? I find it interesting that a guy like Zach Edey has said no to Team Canada, and he's opting to play in Summer League. I think Edey views it in a little bit of a different light, but, those, small sample sizes can be really, really important. And you would think the Pacers have a Summer League focus of we're going to do everything. Those few games that Jarace Walker plays, we're going to do everything to try and get him into a role that will transition to our NBA team.
Now, is that something we would like to do, a little show trip to Vegas for the Summer League?
Gosh, that'd be nice. But does that mean 4 a.m. wake-up calls?
Oh, yeah, it does. I know someone who does a morning show at 7 a.m., and they were in Vegas last week, and they did their show, and they did it at 4 a.m., and they had a good time, but I don't know.
You could get a rowdy crowd still up at 4 a.m.
I kind of feel like you go right from the craps table right to on air, do you not, at that point? You can't go to bed.
Speaking of Vegas, it's where the Fever will be tomorrow night. Did you catch any of their comeback win against Phoenix yesterday?
I did, and I appreciated Big Mouth Taurasi, who before the season said it was going to be a reality check for Caitlin Clark and didn't want to say anything about playing Caitlin Clark, and then got a big lead against Caitlin Clark and then lost the lead to Caitlin Clark and company. So that made me happy. And she was right there. I've been telling you guys she's going to get a triple-double. And damn it, KB, it was right there.
She was one rebound short,
She was one rebound short. And there were a couple loose balls that kind of were in her area. I'm like, grab the damn ball, Caitlin. But she didn't. But they came back. It's the first time since 2022. Couple years now they've been down in the second half by 15-plus points and came back and won the game.
Well, not only that, hell, they're down 7 with 4 to go.
No kidding.
And if you look, that is, I would say, their best one of the season. On the
by
road,
without
team
a doubt.
better than 500, team right there in the standings. And then if you just go to the other storylines, you just brought one up. Taurasi a bit running her mouth. There's some Olympians on that team from a Mercury standpoint. And again, you're down 7 with 4 to go. And it wasn't Clark making the shots. She obviously had big back-to-back assists. Late shot clock. It was panic mode there. They were down 7. She chucks it to Katie Lou Samuelson and hits that 3. Then Boston hits it a couple possessions later. And boy, Kelsey Mitchell, just some big, big shots there in the final minute. I know everyone loves to roast Christy Size. I would say that was a pretty good out-of-timeout play she called to get Kelsey Mitchell wide open for that mid-range jumper. and the Fever get a big win. So now at the midway point of the season, 8-12 on the year. Again, Vegas tomorrow night. That's a 9:30er as they wrap up their last Western road trip of the season.
Yeah, we'll get to a morning check down coming up also at 7:30. I think there is a clear takeaway, KB, for what the Pacers are up to as they now re-signed Obi Toppin and did so with swiftness. We'll dive into that, but your morning check down coming up on the other end. Caitlin Clark on the win, plus a free agent update there in the NBA. All your scores from last night. Morning check down. It's coming up next. Thanks for hanging out with us. Wake up call on this Monday, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
Get to our Colts question of the day in a bit. An intriguing year 3 for this player. Obviously, plenty of Pacers conversation as we maybe can even close the book on any major activity for them this offseason. But speaking of major, I would say yesterday qualified as a major win out in the desert for the Indiana Fever. Big one over the Phoenix Mercury.
Yeah, 88-82, your final last night. You know, the Fever down, like you mentioned a couple minutes ago, down 7, down 15 at one point. Again, a slow start for the Fever, but they got the win on the road. They needed to beat a good team on the road last night, and they did that yesterday. And Sundays, a couple Sundays here, I've been kind for Caitlin Clark and company. And Clark was fantastic. 15 points, 12 assists, 9 rebounds in the win. And she talked on ESPN right after the game about the victory.
I think we were just resilient. You know, when they punch us in the mouth, we always found a way to answer. I think people stepped up when their number was called and they were put into the game. And I thought we came out and started the second half well and really just found a way and dug deep and made plays when we needed to.
5 players in double figures. When they do that, KB, they win quite a few games on the win. Here's head coach Christy Sides.
I think we just were getting some shots and we got some confidence. We hit a couple. And then as shooters, like anytime you can feel good when one goes in the hole. I think that and then our defense was getting stops, and that just breeds confidence.
Up next for the Fever on the road in Vegas, taking on the Aces. That'll be tomorrow night, 9:30, a late one on ESPN.
You mentioned the slow start yesterday. I always get nervous when a team stands up until the first basket, and the first basket just doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen, yeah.
I'm like, oh, boy, they're going to be tired here. Are we going to get to the first media timeout before?
Don't some fan bases do that in college
I
basketball?
know, and I'm always like, oh, boy, here comes the awkward clap of like, come on.
Yeah, you get down 14-0.
You guys can do it. I think it was 14-2 at one point yesterday, but a couple big flurries from Caitlin Clark.
It's a big win last night.
Now, that was her last media, right?
Yeah.
Because then she, I don't know if developed more symptoms or what happened, but migraine for her after that game, I guess, kind of played through it during the game. She did not do any media availability from a group setting afterwards. So it sounds like something she dealt with at Iowa, but just to keep an eye on again tomorrow night, 9:30, as Andy said. And again, a shout out to Kelsey Mitchell. Some big plays late. You're reminded with Mitchell, too. It's like, wait, she was also one of the more decorated scorers in college basketball history. A couple big pull-ups for her there to close that one.
She was also
out.
Benched yesterday. You know
Early
that? I mean,
on,
yeah.
first
She only
half,
played, 4 or 5 minutes in the first half?
Yeah.
Came back, had a big second half.
But she's a scorer, to
Yep.
say the least, and some big ones there late. All right, baseball-wise over the weekend, I'm actually going to go here first. I could not believe this when they flashed this graphic up last night, flipping back and forth between the gymnastics and baseball, Sunday Night Baseball. Wyatt Langford hits for the cycle last night. First person to do that in the history of Sunday Night Baseball.
Is it really? Oh, my goodness. That's a good stat. Good for him.
Like, are cycles that rare? Am I just, like, off base with that? I don't know. Sunday Night Baseball seems like such a historical thing to me. You would think somebody has done it.
What's bigger anymore, a no-hitter or a cycle? Because no-nos aren't viewed the way they used to be. Remember, like 3 years ago, there were a bunch of no-nos at the beginning of a season?
Yeah,
everyone was complaining about the baseball or whatever it was.
I could be totally
Remember
off
that?
on this. Do we get a no-no once a month now?
I mean, I don't think we get one once a month, but it's not met with the same energy as it used to be.
And then the other thing, because all the Midwest teams pretty much stink. How about Paul Skeens now? He gets another start here over the weekend. Saw this stat out there. Pitchers who have struck out at least 70 batters and allowed less than a dozen runs in their first 9 starts of their Major League Baseball career. So under 12 runs, over 70 strikeouts.
Okay.
He's the only one to do that in the history of the league.
Oh, he's the only one? I thought you were going to say like Tom Glavine or something like that.
No.
There's nobody else.
Yeah, Whitey Ford didn't make that list. No, Morton Spahn,
That's probably
Cy Young,
probably one of Scotty
Bob
J's
Gibson.
pop quiz questions later on today.
Pretty good baseball player. Indians lost quite a lot on the road. They're actually in Louisville to start this week. And starting July 4th, if you want to check out the Indians over at Victory Field, you're going to get them there from July 4th to the 14th, leading into their All-Star break at Victory Field. So plenty of action. Obviously, a little firework action over at Victory Field coming up later this week.
Happy Bobby Bonilla Day, too.
Saw that. We're still. Is that last till like 2040?
Oh yeah, it's
11
like 20
years
It's
left.
like
11
20,
years left.
Yeah.
2035 or something like that. Yeah, we
And
talked
what is
about
it?
that a
1
couple
million?
weeks ago.
A little over $1 million.
Yeah.
1.1 million.
Did you ever get an allowance growing up? It's like Bobby Bonilla's.
Never like that.
It's like Bobby
Didn't look
Bonilla's.
like that.
It's his allowance.
Gosh, that's
do
a hell of an
allowances
allowance.
still happen? Are allowances still something that like Mark? Do your girls get an allowance? I'm
No.
asking. I'm genuinely asking because I have no idea if that's the case.
No, not yet. I'm sure parents are like, I have a Cash App, Mom. Just throw it in there.
You Venmo your
Venmo
daughter.
me. Yeah.
Try to give
Scan
them
my
$5,
QR
like, I want
code
this
here and
digital.
go ahead and Venmo me.
Yeah.
But if the lemonade stand doesn't take cash, just Venmo me.
Mark has to scan the QR code every Monday morning, every Sunday night before he goes to bed.
Thank you for picking up your Barbies.
I love that. A couple things in the NBA. Zach Edey withdrawing his name from Team Canada. That came out, what was it, yesterday? Or was that Saturday night? I thought it was yesterday.
Yesterday, yeah.
So I found that to be interesting. You know what? It sounded like Edey is just kind of tired after everything he's been through the last year and a half. That's the way I read it.
I thought it sounded very committed to I want to make
his
this
team.
NBA thing
Yeah,
work.
yeah. Well,
Which
good for him.
I look
You
at Canada's
you
roster.
can't do both.
I look at Canada's roster and thought, boy, like Kelly Olynyk, Trey Lyles, Dwight Powell. It's not like, Canada's got a good team, but their good players are guards and wings.
Yeah, Jamal Murray.
Like, I thought Edey would have had a chance to make that team. But yeah, that statement to me read more of like, no, I hear everyone doubting me NBA-wise, so I'm going to go play in the Summer League. I am bummed that the Pacers don't play them in the Summer League. I would have liked to have seen just, hell, I'm not watching a ton of Summer League outside of the Pacers. Would have liked to have seen that. But yeah, Zach Edey saying, again, not on Team Canada yet. He still would have had to have he
would have made the team,
team. But again, on paper, he made it for the Worlds last year. I feel like he would have had a great shot at it.
And then NBA-wise, what interests you? Obviously, Paul George gets the 4 years, $212 million. He gets the max. Contavious Caldwell-Pope got 3 for 66.
There was like a brief period there where the Pacers were flirted around with him.
Who would you rather have? Pope's been on championship teams, a little bit more defense, but his numbers are literally the same as Obi Toppin, right around 40% from 3, and both guys average about 10 points and about 3 or 4 rebounds a game. Like, literally, their numbers are about the same.
Yeah, he goes to Orlando. Again, Orlando's kind of a team, like, I think we're forgetting about a little bit. They're largely going to be team running back, and then adding that guy, was last year a fluke for them. How much are they? They took Cleveland to 7. That's probably a team that, they view themselves internally a little bit better on that end. But yeah, again, Eric Gordon to the 76ers, so his career will continue. The one thing I think kind of missing from his career outside of that, 1 year in Houston and the deep playoff runs, we'll see if he can find that in Philly for him. So, yeah, I would say relatively quiet, though, and we'll see how, yesterday, 6 o'clock, I guess, was the start time, so we'll see how a full day 2 looks here with NBA free
The only
agency.
other one I have is, how much do we care? How much are we supposed to care about Klay Thompson? Klay Thompson is a name. The Mavs want him. The thought is LeBron James would take a significant amount of less money to help the roster. That would include a guy like Klay Thompson. So the Mavs and Lakers potentially down to those two for Klay. I don't know. For 2 years, at least 2 years, KB, we've been talking about how Klay Thompson is washed up.
I know. There are times, I don't know if it's the right word, but I'm like, does he have the yips? Like, he's such a great shooter. And again, it's not like I watch a ton of Warriors, but I'm like, I kind of thought that at various points last year. By the way, speaking of Warriors, shout out to Trace Jackson-Davis making that USA Select team. I think that happened maybe even on Friday. But for those unfamiliar with how that works, Team USA, the Olympic team, will practice against a select team of, Cooper Flagg, who's going to Duke, a lot of these young players. Jabari Smith's on that team. I'm forgetting some young NBA players that are on it. But Trace Jackson-Davis made that team. Now,
I didn't see
know
that. Good for him.
how much of that is Steve Kerr influence. Steve Kerr obviously coaching the Olympic team, but Matt Painter is actually one of the assistants for the select team. And we know Matt is extremely high on Trace Jackson-Davis. Yeah, Brandon Miller, Keegan Murray, Amen Thompson. So, think kind of those related guys. And, Team USA, it's not like they've got a lot of great big guys. Not to say Trace is going to be an Olympian at some point, obviously, but still, pretty cool honor for him and a nod to what he did during his rookie season.
All right, there's your morning check down. Coming up on the other end, we just had on Friday Chad Buchanan. He said, what about Obi Toppin? We'll dive into that. And then my thought on what this really signifies with the Pacers by giving that $60 million, that 4-year, $60 million contract to Obi Toppin. We'll do that. Our Colts question of the day at 8 o'clock. Alex Golden in the 9 o'clock hour. Appreciate you hanging out with us. Wake up call right here on 93.5, 107.5 The Fan. songs from the 90s, I think.
It's marching.
Big win for the Fever yesterday. Frankly, any win is a big win right now, particularly away from home, particularly with teams that are right there in the standings. I saw Diana Taurasi did take the high road after the game in regards to Caitlin Clark, but I think that one had to mean quite a lot for the Fever, and the Christy Sides haters silence there in the final minute as she dialed up some big ones there to get the Fever over the hump. Again, tomorrow night, 9:30 will be ESPN against the Vegas Aces. Speaking of, in prime time, in some marquee atmospheres, did I see a little Tyrese Halliburton wrestling action over the weekend?
I was wondering, I was gonna wait. I was gonna wait to the 8:00 hour to bring this up. So on Friday, if you guys remember, if you were listening on Friday, I would say KB and Mark Dykton had a little bit of a spat between, about professional wrestling. And I kind of made the point at this point in his mid-30s, KB, you've never been into professional wrestling, that at this point you're probably never going to get into professional wrestling unless maybe your kids get into it. That would be the only way that I could see the Bowen household getting into professional wrestling. And then lo and behold, what do I see on Friday night? A little Tyrese Halliburton on WWE SmackDown versus Jalen Brunson. We had the brass knuckles mark. There was a chair that went into the ring. Kind of all the stereotypes and bona fides you get in professional wrestling. But I liked it, man. Halliburton has jean shorts on. It reminded me.
It was like Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Yeah, it reminded me going
to Tyrese 317 shirt.
Reminded me of going to middle school.
I was confused. I thought Tyrese Halliburton and Jalen Brunson FaceTime every day and they're friends.
Well, friends can still have disagreements, and when they have disagreements, they go in the squared circle. That's where they go.
So not fake,
Dennis,
right?
Dennis Rodman and
Predetermined,
Karl
I
Malone.
believe, was the phrase that Mark Dykton used on that end.
Oh, no. Jalen, don't do this.
Jalen's grabbing a chair.
There's no turning back. Jalen Brunson with a steel chair.
I mean, this has to happen at one of the Lucas Oil events, does it not?
Man, the electricity.
Oh, that's great.
Coming at the Royal Rumble.
Dude, it was awesome when Halliburton came out there. It's Jake Paul, right? I always
Logan
get
Paul.
Logan Paul.
Jake Paul's the boxer. Logan Paul's the wrestler.
He's the boxer. When Logan Paul's like, welcome Tyrese Halliburton, and he comes out, and this is what I love. Even though WWE has, quote, cleaned it up from the Attitude Era, which was, above and beyond KB. He comes out in MSG as Tyrese Halliburton, and the first three guys are leaning over the bench to give the double bird to Tyrese Halliburton, and I love that. When I saw that, I said, let's go. I can get into this on a Friday
Halliburton
night.
did have a great, was it two? Logan Paul and saying, it's about time New York, beat Indiana and something in this building or something along those lines.
I loved it.
That's great.
I feel like this is the way we get Kevin Bowen into wrestling.
This is the only way we get Kevin Bowen into wrestling.
I did chuckle
My
pretty
God,
hard.
it's Benedict Mathurin. Here he comes. He's riding a Zamboni.
Honestly,
he's injured.
When Halliburton views the NBA schedule, remember this time last year, he was like, I was just waiting for when or how many national games we'd get. Remember, he made it very clear. It's like, I can't wait for that TNT game against the Celtics. That was the big thing. When this year's schedule rolls out, he's only going to care about February 1st. He doesn't want Royal Rumble to be show. He doesn't want the Pacers on the road, and in all likelihood,
it's a great point. Yeah,
I mean, I get the Royal Rumbles at Lucas Oil, but the NBA is probably not going to schedule the Pacers at home. I would think around that weekend, so Halliburton's not going to be too happy. Or at least
This is such a good point.
Maybe Tyrese Halliburton will be a special entrant in the Royal Rumble. How cool would that be?
The Simon family is going to have to get that private jet out and maybe fly some people back and forth. How about that?
And speaking of back, it is right now team running back. That's what the Pacers have operated with here this offseason. And really, we'll get with this with Alex Golden in about an hour. Financially, Andy, it is minuscule what the Pacers can do now moving forward as they fill out these final roster spots. Again, Obi Toppin, that deal reportedly 4 years, $60 million. Jalen Smith declined his player option over the weekend. And really, those were kind of the two, I guess, somewhat up in the air items at this point. Now you're just debating extensions for McConnell and Nembhard. What exactly does Johnny Furphy's contract look like? So, I would say more so than just about any other NBA team right now, we might have just closed the book on what the Pacers are going to do between now and, late October when the season starts.
Yeah, it's interesting. So on Friday night, I actually had Alex Golden on Indiana Sports Talk on Friday night, and one of the things that we talked about was, it seemed like Obi Toppin wanted about $15 million a year, and whether it be, the Siakam contract or the Halliburton contract or what they want to do with Nembhard, what they will most likely get done this offseason to TJ McConnell. A player wants the money. They're getting the money. Now, the Pacers still have the mid-level exception that is out there that is about 12.8. Now, they can use that as long as they don't go over 178 mil, that first tax apron. It's very confusing in the NBA with all the salary cap stuff. So they still could add somebody. For the most part, it's going to be team running back. And I teased this a couple minutes ago, KB. I think the biggest difference in what I feel the Pacers and other teams, and they say it and they mean it, the Pacers value their bench and they value depth. I mean, there is a chance here if they give a new contract to TJ McConnell, where McConnell's going to be making nice money. We'll see exactly where that is. I mean, you have Obi Toppin at $15 million a year. Obi Toppin is going to be a bench player. He is a bench player. I mean, if there's injuries, something happens, he can start. He started some games last year, but he is a bench player. Do not get it twisted. He is a 20 to 23, 24 minutes a game type guy, if that. And so you have TJ McConnell, you have Obi Toppin, and then Andrew Nembhard. To me, basically, I believe he is now a starter. He will start the year next to Tyrese Halliburton. But, if he ever came off the bench, you're looking at them wanting to give him a new contract as well. They put time, money, resources into that bench. A lot of teams do not do that. Their bench is very cheap. It's a couple guys making, a small amount of money, but the Pacers have said, we want to be a deep team, and they value those guys, and they've given them the money and the years to show them that, hey, we value them. A 4-year, $60 million guaranteed deal for Obi Toppin is a big deal.
It's funny you bring that up. I had this conversation with Chad Buchanan just prior to the start of last season. I said to Chad, I'm like, I almost laugh at people are like, yeah, I hope the Pacers make the playoffs. I'm like, they are going to make the playoffs. Like, there's no, their bench, in my opinion, and this was the thought I had last fall, they might be the deepest team in the NBA. If you want to really pull out 1 to 9, 1 to 10, 1 to 11, however you want to view, how deep a team goes. And I said to Chad, over 82 games, that can make a huge difference in whether you make the playoffs, make the play-in, et cetera, et cetera. And I think you watched injury-riddled teams in the East, i.e. Philly, all of a sudden show up in the play-in that you wouldn't have projected them to be a play-in team, of course, had they been fully healthy. Now, where I was wrong, I didn't think then your depth would be a huge advantage playoff-wise. Now, of course, you played banged-up teams. You played Milwaukee. You played New York, who are banged up. But I think that question in general is almost there again coming into this season. On paper, you can make very strong cases, obviously, that Boston is the better team, that New York's the better team. Even Philly. Philly might be the best example of it, Andy, of Philly might have the best big three, if you want to label that in the NBA,
right.
One of the best big three, but you have to put the asterisk of if healthy. Whereas Indiana, they're going to try and get to 8, 9, 10 guys into that rotation. Does that continue to be as big of a strength playoff-wise? I still think it'll be a big strength regular season-wise. But then when you get in the postseason, is that still as prevalent for you? And again, just how or if do you get Jarris Walker minutes? And, it's one of these things where you see Jalen Smith decline his player option. I said to Jake and Jimmy when I went on with them Friday, to me, Jalen Smith, it was almost like a junior high relationship, his career with the Pacers. Jalen Smith shot 42% from three last year.
I mean, we did segments on Jalen Smith the first half of the season, how well he was
and
playing.
Rebounds
Should he start?
At a higher level, you could say, than Isaiah Jackson or, even rivals kind of Miles Turner. It's kind of amazing that Jalen Smith is now viewed in a light of so expendable. And I bring that up to say it's a little bit like running back in the NFL. What that third center looks like. What did the Pacers do in the playoffs? They played Toppin at the 5 at times. So that's where I do think, okay, if you made it literally a backup 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 right now, Jarris Walker's probably not in that. But if the small ball continues to be there in the NBA, and I know the Pacers have talked of Jarris as more of a wing, maybe he does find his way into some consistent clock there. But that is something that, I was kind of reminded by. Like, I still think the Pacers need to go out and find a third center, but exactly who or what that looks like, I think is very interesting to me.
Yeah, and it's just a different way of building a team. Some teams waste all their money on the starters or a big three, right? And some teams spread out the wealth a little bit more, and that's what the Pacers have done. It's going to be interesting. They still need one of these guys to step up and become a beast. Whether it's Matherin or Walker, that still needs to happen, but they lock up Obi Toppin.
Is Nembhard in that category or no?
To me, he's not. I mean, I view him as a fringe starter. I'm also interested, nobody kicked back on Obi Toppin 4 years, $60 million, $15 million per year to come off the bench. Mostly I've seen locally praised the deal with Obi Toppin.
I'll go back to what I said to you in our opening segment. To me, it's not ideal for a team that we question defense and rebounding so much that the 6'9" guys you're paying big money to, Siakam and Toppin, neither of those qualify, I think, as really what good to elite rebounders or defenders. I think that is a question mark that will remain for this team until they prove it, come playoff time.
All right, we'll take a break. Coming up on the other side, this player for the Colts entering year 3, and it's a big one for him. We'll tell you who that is. Our Colts question of the day, it's coming up next, hour number 2, right ahead. Wake up call, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
Happy July to you, July 1 on this Monday morning. I feel like this will be commonplace between now and that official start to the NFL season, but I did see a tweet yesterday. We are now 10 Sundays away from that first week 1 Sunday, and I kind of laughed at it, and then I thought to myself, man, that is a big opening Sunday for the Indianapolis Colts. You get the Houston Texans in your own building?
Oh, it's a huge one, yeah.
You haven't won a season
Better
opener
believe it.
since 2013? I'm like, oh my gosh, this is going to be massive.
First time seeing Anthony Richardson, you would hope, knock on wood, there week 1. Oh, yeah, I'm ready to go. We're even sooner until we get to college football. You know, college football does that. We're 60 days away or whatever it is.
Sure.
It's always the great balance of we can't wait for football to arrive. It also means that, like, things like winter are just around the corner.
Oh, man, you got to go there?
I do have to go there.
July
'cause
1st, you're talking about
July 1.
winter.
I know. Well, that's the thing. Listen, you know what today is as well? It's the official breakup of IUPUI.
Oh,
Of
we're
Indiana
going
and
IU
Purdue.
Indy today?
Well, no, I mean, that's what it is, among other things.
Wasn't Purdue on the circle?
They were.
Late last week.
I saw
making the
Derek
rounds?
Schultz out there on, what was it? Was it Friday? I think he was out there having a good time. So today is also the Bobby Bonilla Day. You mentioned he's 61, okay? He gets another $1.9 million from the Mets, okay? And $500K he gets from the Baltimore Orioles deferred payment. So today you will
I
see.
didn't know the Orioles were involved in this.
You will hear every sports radio gas bag across the country, local, national podcast, does not matter. We'll mention Bobby Bonilla Day, but did you know he's not the only one getting deferred compensation? 54-year-old, your guys are doing this. 54-year-old Ken Griffey Jr. receives his final $3.59 million payment from the Reds today. He deferred $57.5 million in his career over the last 16 years. He's been collecting from your Cincinnati Reds. You also have 52-year-old Manny Ramirez gets $2 million from the Red Sox today. He deferred $32 million in his career. And then do you remember Chris Davis by any chance?
The big hitter, right?
Remember, he was the big hitter that he was kind of like Adam Dunn.
Oriole?
Yeah, if you
Lots
remember.
of home runs, lots of strikeouts.
Yes, lots of home runs, lots of strikeouts. So he kind of basically had the yips. Like he went to where he just could not play baseball anymore. He gets $9.1 million today from the Baltimore Orioles. He deferred up to, I think it was it's two separate ones, so I'm not exactly sure how much, but he's still owed $40 million through the year 2037 is Chris Davis, who signed that terrible $161 million deal. So good for him. A couple deferments on July 1st.
Major League Baseball contracts make my hair turn gray.
What do you understand less, baseball contracts or like NBA, like
Boy, I tell you,
how they do? Like,
I mean, if
NBA
I
is
had
confusing.
to rank it is easily the NFL number one in terms of easiest to learn. Like, I mean, we're talking whatever, 101 type of course level. I would consider the NBA a step above that, like 201 level. But I think Major League Baseball is more confusing than that.
Okay.
The arbitration stuff.
yeah,
And like
Years of
he's
control.
a Rule 5. It's like a rule.
Yeah.
What?
I would
Yeah.
agree with you.
a buddy of mine played like high level college baseball, and he had some friends in Major League Baseball. I was like, will you go explain it to me? Like, can you dumb it down to me? And I mean, after 10 minutes, I was like, I need another drink. I mean, like,
Well, if you need 10 minutes to explain it, that tells you all you need to know.
I have no idea. Now, again, the NBA, it's not, I don't want to act like I've got some, big time knowledge base on it. But for the most part, I think I generally understand like where the Pacers are at right now. If they want to do anything more significant, they've got to dip into the luxury tax. There's a penalty that's involved in that. But for the most part, this is going to be like status quo. But still, I mean, bird rights and things like that, that's why we got Tony East to nerd out with us.
It
and
ain't
Alex
easy.
Golden join us here in a bit.
Here's another one. The Nationals are paying $15 million to Max Scherzer today. So congratulations.
Well, at least
to Max
Scherzer's pitched in my
Yeah.
lifetime.
Yeah, he's in his 40s. He's
I
not
didn't have
55
armpit hair
years
the
old.
last time Bobby Bonilla stepped in the batter's box.
I would say I think Bobby Bonilla is more infamous because of this than anything else. Like I don't think we'd know the name Bobby
certainly.
Bonilla if it wasn't because
He
of this
last
contract.
played in 2000, was it 3 we learned during the break? I looked it up, but I
No.
already forgot. 2001.
2001, I think.
2001.
Definitely did not have armpit armpit hair in 2001.
Played for the.
So, yeah.
I do like your line in the sand is whether or not you had armpit hair.
Yeah,
I appreciate that.
No chance. I think my voice sounded like Christy Sides at some point there.
Let's dive into Alex Golden going to join us in the 9 o'clock hour. We'll circle around and obviously come back to Obi Toppin signing the 4-year deal. A lot of NBA free agency stuff out there this morning, but it's 8 o'clock. We do it every day. It's our Colts question of the day.
Time now for your Colts question of the day.
I love the fancy little imaging that we have there. Today we decided, we texted last night, KB, that we wanted, and you wrote about this guy, was it last week or the week before?
Yeah, last week.
Okay, I couldn't remember if it was last week or the week before. Alec Pierce, our Colts question of the day. In this offense, what should be the percentage of snaps that he takes, and what do we think is going to happen with his season? Again, just for people that may not know, he led the league in percentage of snaps taken from his team. It was damn near 100% of the snaps he was out there. And, he basically dwarfed everybody in the NFL. So take it away. I guess the question would be, what do we think we see from Alec Pierce? What does that number actually need to be? And does he lose his job to A.D. Mitchell? That'll be the question coming up here in about 3 weeks.
Well, let's start there because I think it's just such an astonishing figure of 1,090 snaps played for Alec Pierce last season. The most of any wideout in the NFL.
You know who's second on that list? I'm looking at it. Because so Alec Pierce is first, Adam Thielen is second, and then because you're thinking those two guys, Thielen had an okay year, but you're not thinking of those guys as the top wide receivers, and then it's Devontae Smith, DJ Moore, AJ Brown, Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Is CeeDee Lamb high on the list?
He is CeeDee Lamb. Yeah, he's. I'm trying to look at it here. Eyeball. He's about 10th on the list.
Okay.
Right behind Puka Nacua.
Because I bring up CeeDee Lamb because last year, and I double checking this as I'm saying it out loud, I thought CeeDee Lamb maybe led all wideouts in catches. Yes, yeah. Oh boy, he had 16 more catches than anybody in the league, which is kind of crazy. So CeeDee Lamb had 135 catches last year, and Alec Pierce again played more snaps than CeeDee Lamb. Do you know how many catches Alec Pierce had last year?
38.
Alec Pierce had 32 catches last year. So CeeDee Lamb had 103 more catches than Alec Pierce, yet Pierce played more snaps.
It's unbelievable.
It's
an unbelievable stat.
I want to just give you those stats just to reiterate how wild it is to actually look at that on paper and how kind of, I guess, confusing it is to describe Pierce's career. Now, I do think there's context around it, plenty of context. Pierce has not had, I think, quarterbacks that accentuate his strength. His strength is getting vertical. His strength is, I remember the Raiders game last year after, Pierce was the number one wideout against the Falcons because Pittman was out late in the season, and Pierce was pretty much a no-show. And then that Raiders game, he gets one target in that game, and it's a 50-yard touchdown over the top. Remember, it was a short yardage play.
Yep.
They play action fake it. They block it up like it's a run, and boom, Minshew throws a ball right into the breadbasket of Pierce. He scores a touchdown in a one-possession late December game or early January at that point, whatever it was, and it was massive in the Colts winning a game that they had to have at that point of the season. So I guess to continue our baseball analogy to start off, to me, Pierce is no longer in the daily lineup, but he is still a guy that can come off the bench in the 7th or 8th and give you something. And so I view A.D. Mitchell as a matter of when, not if. He's humming. He's coming for that other, outside wideout spot. And I think based off what I saw in the spring, he should get it. I think there's more variety to his game. I think there's a little bit more in his bag, as the young kids would say. And, I go back to what Pierce said at the end of the offseason, Andy. Pierce gained some weight this offseason. And I was, Pierce on the baseball card, he's 6'3", 215 or 6'3", 210. That's fine. You don't view him as necessarily a guy that needs to put on weight, but the higher-ups wanted him to. Reggie Wayne and even management, they wanted him to put on weight because they feel like the playing weight that he has been at limits his ability to create separation on the underneath stuff. And I think if you watch Pierce, you just don't see him make a lot of plays that are not splashy plays, but they're just consistent plays that Michael Pittman makes. Michael Pittman creates a little separation on the 6-yard curl or, whatever, a little in route. And he's able to give his quarterback a chance to throw it to him. Pierce doesn't do that. So for me, I view Pierce as still part of your plans, still can be the deep ball guy, especially with Anthony Richardson, but in no way, shape, or form should he be playing that amount of snaps. If he's taking that amount of snaps, the Colts got bigger
Well,
issues.
something's wrong. Yeah, there's injuries on the team, right? I mean, that's how I view it. Well, let me ask you this. Whenever we mention, I feel like whenever we mention Alec Pierce, we have to go to the nuance, and it's the correct, I want to be clear here, it's the correct analysis with Alec Pierce that we go to, hey, the first couple years here, he has not played with quarterbacks that kind of fit his mold. And while that is true, I feel like we're being nice to Alec Pierce. Does that make sense? The Colts are not doing that. The Colts said those things. They've said those things about Alec Pierce, but then they went out this offseason. They drafted 2 wide receivers, and they put a lot of draft capital into A.D. Mitchell, who we think is really going to eat into and should eat into playing time in some of those snaps with Alec Pierce. I'm interested that you're just flat out saying that you think Pierce is essentially what, the 4th wide receiver now?
Well,
I mean, basically.
Yes, but again, I want to reiterate, I don't view A.D. Mitchell and Alec Pierce competing for that other wideout job like I would view Will Fries at right guard against Danny Pinter at right guard. If that battle plays out, Fries versus Pinter, the winner of that job, just with how offensive line continuity and cohesion works, the winner of that job plays every snap.
Right.
It's very rare to see offensive linemen literally split time, whereas at wideout, you will have specific plays dialed up for certain guys. So literally the Colts last year operated primarily, and it's not the exact math, but it's pretty close to this. Michael Pittman would play like 95% of the wideout snaps when he was in a game, and Pierce would play like 98%. Like, you're running those two into the ground. Now, can you take Pittman, and let's say Pittman instead of 95, let's say he becomes 85. And Pierce instead of 98, he becomes 48. And then Mitchell eats up the other percentages. That's kind of how I view the pie of those guys. And obviously, you still have Josh Downs. I mean, you mentioned 4th wideout. I assume you're throwing Josh Downs into that mix.
Yeah, and I know they're all different, so it's kind of hard
Downs
to say
is
that.
the slot, so
Pierce
he's just
is not
different.
going to ever play the same position as Josh Downs does.
To me, like, Pierce should still be out there. Clearly, they view him as a blocker that does, well. And again, Richardson theoretically should tap into more of Pierce's potential as an over-the-top guy. You go back to even Pierce's rookie year. Again, he didn't catch a whole lot of balls from Matt Ryan, but there were a few plays. He won the Jacksonville game late in that game. The Colts decided to take a shot to try and ice that game at Lucas Oil, and Matt Ryan throws one up to Pierce, and he catches a 50-50 ball. Like, when Pierce has got chances down the field, A, I feel like he's come down with a decent amount of them. B, he oftentimes will draw a flag, and then just C, it's a little bit of that threat of when you throw him outside, that opposing defense at least has to be like, oh boy, should we put a safety over there? Or are we going to trust our corner? Now, to get back to your point and like we're being a little bit too nice to Alec Pierce, to me, Andy, you don't draft dudes in the middle of round 2 just to be a one-trick pony.
I know. This
so
is my problem.
I think is a fair statement. But at the same time, it's year 3. He doesn't make a crazy amount of money. He can be a fine piece of your offense. And then obviously when his contract comes up here in a couple years, right now he would not be a guy that I would look to re-sign. But, for now, let's see what Richardson can do with him. He can be a nice change of pace. Again, bring the big bat off the bench for you if you need to hit a homer in the 7th or the 8th. See what you can do. How can you dial it up? But he's going to have to prove it to me that this weight gain of 5 to 10 pounds is all of a sudden going to mean he becomes an 8-catch, 82-yard guy like Michael Pittman Jr. is, for example.
Yeah, to me, he was just a little bit too much of a one-trick pony, but I am leaving. What I'm doing with Alec Pierce is I am wanting A.D. Mitchell. I am wanting a little bit less of Pierce just because it makes no sense that he would play 98% of the snaps and would lead the NFL with wide receiver snaps. It makes no sense that would be the case. I am leaving an openness in my mind that if Anthony Richardson is here, and by the way, not even AR, but Joe Flacco, if Flacco has to play, we know now, from his Baltimore days, but especially last year in Cleveland, we know that Flacco can let it go.
Well, and we saw that this spring,
yeah,
too.
So that's not a,
he was uncorking
there's, Gardner Minshew, or if you mention, the the noodle arm of any other quarterback out there. You have two guys that are going to be able to throw the ball down the field. So for me, we have used that nuance for 2 years. I'm going to use it this year and keep an open mind about Alec Pierce. But no, I when I say he's on the chopping block, to me, in my mind, if he's going to get legit run in the NFL, it's got to start this year for Alec Pierce, especially having an offensive coach. They need him. They need to, I think they should have a pretty good offense, especially if Anthony Richardson is there. And then the other thing, and listen, it's not a team running back thing, but when you are allergic to free agency, like so very often Chris Ballard is, then the draft means more.
Oh, certainly.
And the draft means a lot more, okay? And so I can go back to that 2022 draft. Round number 2, Alec Pierce. Round number 3, Jelani Woods.
Yeah.
And I bring those two guys up because these are big years for these guys.
Right.
And you've waited a couple years, and we've said, well, Jelani Woods had the injury.
Well, was Nick Cross also round 3 that year, if you want to keep on playing that out?
Yeah.
Do I have my drafts right?
Ryman was round 3. I believe. Yeah, and so was Cross. You're right. Yeah. You're spot on with that
now,
one.
obviously, Ryman has been an absolute hit.
He's been great.
Absolute hit. But, boy, you talk about 3 of those first 4 picks entering massive years to prove themselves.
Like, you know what I'm saying? I mean, if we
Sure.
talk about it's not going to be big time free agent time.
More pressure
that's
falls
fine.
on the draft.
Then
Yeah,
you
right.
can't take Jelani Woods in the 3rd round and be your number 3 and have this guy be a net negative. And the same with Alec Pierce.
Again, Woods, you could play the injury card for a year.
Absolutely.
Pierce and Cross do not have that of the excuse. Cross really, I think, has little to no excuse. Pierce, if we're asking for excuses, which is, not obviously not the ringing endorsements on these individual players, but Pierce could play the quarterback card a little bit on that end. So again, Colts training camp, we talked about that announcement late last week. Again, report day coming up 3 weeks from Wednesday. Getting back to the Fever for just a second from yesterday, Andy. Again, big win, I think, on several accounts. First off, any win is a big win, especially on the road, especially against a team with a winning record. I think that was the first win all year over a team with a winning record. But if you look at the standings, like Phoenix is right there with you. I mean, just a little bit above you. But they theoretically are going to be in the mix for one of those final playoff spots. That's why the Chicago game a few weeks ago was, I guess, what was that, a week ago Sunday? That's why that game felt like, oh man, such a sour taste to end that 5-game stretch where they went 4-1, but Chicago means more because not just Angel Reese and Kennedy Carter and all that. It's because they're right next to you in the standings. But, I mean, down 7, 4 minutes to go. If you're going to tell me Caitlin Clark doesn't take a shot the rest of the way and you're going to win that game, I would have laughed at you. But she found Katie Lou Samuelson for a huge 3, late shot clock down 7. Aaliyah Boston hits a big 3, late shot clock. I mean, we're not talking Kelsey Mitchell here or even Erica Wheeler or somebody like that. Some big 3s by those two. And then, again, Kelsey Mitchell hits a few huge ones. Those are Clark assists, by the way, the Samuelson and the Boston 3s. And then Kelsey Mitchell, big time. And I said a little bit earlier in the show, when they flashed up the Caitlin Clark graphics at Iowa, late in the year, it was like, I think Kelsey Plum, I believe, is the 2nd all-time leading scorer in women's basketball. I was reminded that Kelsey Mitchell's 3rd. Kelsey Mitchell at Ohio State was the 3rd, and now she's 3rd on the list because of Caitlin climbing above her. Like, she's a scorer. One of my friends was texting me and mentioned, like, she's got some, like, De'Aaron Fox to her game.
Okay.
Kind of that spark plug, a little bit of a lefty there. That I watch her play, and I do think of that quite often. I mean, she's a gunner, and that was a huge shot she hit. Obviously, she had the 3-point play off the glass, but down 1 there late. Great job by Chrissy Sides to dial up the Clark decoy. And Kelsey Mitchell hit a huge shot there, and you're able to ice it from there.
Yeah, Clark played 39 minutes last night. Have you checked they got to be an underdog, a pretty substantial underdog.
I think it's 12.
Against the Aces. Is it 12? Wow.
That's got to be near the highest all year, right?
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. It's 13.5, actually.
Wow.
Well, that's a big number, 13.5. I know
the
Vegas
Aces
one of the best in the league,
have
obviously.
won 4 in a row. I know they struggled a little bit there earlier in the month of June. Caitlin Clark had just 8 points when these teams met in that first matchup. The Aces won 99-80. So 6 games to go until that Olympic break for them. I didn't realize this. Did you guys know that the USA Olympic team for the women are playing the WNBA All-Stars?
I had no idea. That's a good idea, though, isn't it?
Now,
I mean,
is this
aren't they a lot of all-stars on that team,
well,
though?
sure.
Yeah,
so obviously it's going to be a little bit
second
of your
level of
second
all-stars.
level. But, like, is that going to be Caitlin Clark juiciness?
Well, it has to be, right? I mean, Caitlin Clark would be the leader of that, to not make Team USA and to be an all-star, right?
July 20th,
Aaliyah
ABC,
Boston?
U.S. Olympic team versus the WNBA All-Stars.
Okay, I'm good with that. When did you say that was again? Say it again.
July 20th,
Okay.
8:30 on ABC.
Now, I
It's
don't
a
know.
Saturday night, 2 weeks from this coming Saturday.
I don't know how you feel. That could do some numbers, by the way.
Oh,
You know, if
that's gonna
Caitlin
do
Clark's
great
playing and
numbers,
everything
yeah.
else. Here's where I am with the Fever. Make the playoffs. That's just
definitely.
isn't that just how you feel? Like, I'm not
Right.
even saying, make it as an 8 seed and go beat New
Right.
York. I'm not doing any of that. To me, it's if you make the postseason, what it's showing is you're better than a team like Chicago and Angel Reese. And that's what I care about probably more than anything.
Rosie Bowen came up from her birthday party yesterday. She got the ring pop in the goodie bag. She got a pen and a notepad. I mean, she's
that's
thrilled.
nice.
She's through the roof. That's how the WNBA does their playoff spots. Everybody
Yeah.
gets a gift bag.
Everyone gets one. I mean, you're wrong. You're not wrong.
8 out of 12. I would have been very disappointed if Rosie wouldn't have come home with one. I'd be very disappointed if the Fever do not get a playoff
Because
spot.
there's going to be, listen, I know for people that aren't paying attention, Dallas and LA and Washington all stink, okay? So, like, to me, they're out of it. So there's going to
You
be
got 9 for 8 spots,
yeah,
right?
Exactly. The Fever, Chicago with Angel Reese, or the Atlanta Dream, who, by the way, the Fever beat the Atlanta Dream, what was it, within the last, 5 days. So they beat them last week. To me, those 3 teams are essentially fighting for 2 spots. And I have a prediction in the WNBA. You ready for this? An Andy Sweeney prediction.
Okay. I'm taking notes.
Unless there's an injury, they will give Rookie of the Year to Angel Reese. That is what I believe. She has 10 straight double-doubles. The league
Does
is
she really?
Yep. And listen, I'm not. We can get into the argument.
Yeah,
Who should
but
it be?
I mean,
and if
hasn't
Clark
Clark-
makes if she makes,
I feel like every game it's
I
like
know.
she's the first rookie ever to have
I'm
300
telling you.
points and 100 assists and
I'm
100
telling
rebounds.
you, it's a WNBA. I'm not. I guess I'm partially saying they're out to get her. They will, or they might do. What was it? Grant Hill.
Well, who's voting on this?
Well,
Is
I
this
have no
media?
idea. I have
Is
no
this
idea. I really don't know.
coaches?
Grant Hill split with who in the NBA? Was it Jason Kidd? Was it Grant Hill and Jason Kidd were co-rookie of the years? I had to look that up. That's back in the day. You didn't have armpit hair then.
No, I wasn't even close. I could have maybe still been in diapers.
You might have been. That might have been the case.
I think I was just out.
But it is. I'm doing a little conspiracy theorist here.
Gosh, you are.
That Angel Reese
you are
will
wearing
get,
the hat.
That the Fever will make the playoffs, but Angel Reese and all of her double-doubles will get Rookie of the Year. That is my guess.
The WNBA Rookie of the Year is selected by sports writers throughout the U.S., each of whom casts a first, second, and third place vote selection. So there you go.
So we can blame
So
the media.
conspiracy
Yeah,
here
so we're
from
gonna
Andy Sweeney.
Yeah, I'm just going to blame the WNBA media. Whoever that is, I will learn their names. We will learn where they live, and we will shame them
We
if
get
this
one more
happens.
game, right? Fever Sky, one
Yeah.
more time.
Yep, one more time.
Midway point of the season, 8-12 for the Fever right now, clinging to that final playoff spot. All right, Alex Golden going to join us in 30. We'll obviously talk a lot of Pacers with him coming up at the top of the hour. Before that, go ahead and check it out wherever you want.
The Morning Checkdown, brought to you by Butler Bulldogs Basketball. Season tickets are on sale now. Order by August 1st for your shot at the best seats in Hinkle Fieldhouse. Visit butlersports.com/buy tickets.
Well, yeah, for your morning check down, KB, let's start there. 88-82, that's your final yesterday afternoon. The Fever go on the road. They finally beat a team above 500 at the time in the Phoenix Mercury. Caitlin Clark, 39 minutes, had the 15 points, 12 assists, 9 rebounds. A great night for her. Here's Clark postgame with ESPN on the win.
I think we were just resilient. When they punch us in the mouth, we always found a way to answer. I think people stepped up when their number was called and they were put into the game. And I thought we came out and started the second half well and really just found a way and dug deep and made plays when we needed to.
Yeah, like I said, Clark was great. Again, had the migraines she was playing through.
Yeah, I wonder if that impacted
yesterday.
her shooting. I mean, she had a nice night, but she was 4 of 14, 2 of 10 from 3.
Could have been.
But very close to a triple-double,
Yeah.
and obviously had some huge assists. And really had a couple of those Clark flurries that
the Fever really needed.
Yeah.
They were down big early. They were down big in the third quarter, and boom, you get that, 8 points in 90 seconds sort of thing, and you're right back in it.
Maybe that's why she didn't want that last rebound. The lights were in her eyes. She's like, I got a migraine.
It's
Forget
exactly
this thing.
right. Get the damn triple-double. Quickly, Kelsey Mitchell, just 5 minutes in the first half, was essentially benched, came back, had the big second half, ended up with 16 points in the game. Here's head coach Christy Sides on the benching and then her coming back and having such a good third and fourth quarter.
Decision that was made, and then Kelsey came back in the second half and just killed it. She, just hit some really big shots, played some good defense, hit that shot, executed that play at the end, and executed that perfectly. Just a big-time player making big-time shots.
She executed perfectly. It was drawn up perfectly by Christy Sides. I know she is certainly the one that gets the most criticism when the Fever lose right now. That was big time from that coaching staff to get the decoy in Clark, get Kelsey Mitchell coming off that screen for the mid-range jumper. Big one there when the Fever were down 1 late. Again, 9:30 tomorrow. I believe that's ESPN for the Fever and the Aces. All right, on the diamond, pretty much every team here in the Midwest is not very good or mediocre, so let's go a couple other places. How about a cycle last night on Sunday Night Baseball? Wyatt Langford does that. I was getting shocked to see the first person to do that on Sunday Night Baseball ever. Paul Skeen's still really good at pitching. He did that over the weekend. And the Indianapolis Indians, they're going to be in Louisville to start this week for 3 in a row. And then after that, it is a big homestand for them. So I know a lot of people love to spend either July 4th or the 4th weekend out at Victory Field. You'll have that opportunity to do that July 4th to the 14th. The Indians at home at Victory Field.
How was the crowd for the Bananas over the Savannah Bananas?
Looked packed to me.
I know my guy Jimmy Cook went on Friday.
Now, were they
so
Friday and Saturday?
I think they were.
Oh, boy,
were they not?
I worry about the weather on Saturday. That was no joke on Saturday.
Saturday the weather was not fantastic.
Well, yeah, Friday I saw some pictures and videos from it. Yeah, it looked full there.
It looked
Speaking
fantastic.
of July 4th, you see Joey Chestnut is going to compete in a July 4th hot dog eating contest.
Yeah, he's going to be out with troops somewhere.
It's in Texas or something.
Okay, and his competition will be?
It's not Kobayashi.
It's an
or anything.
exhibition.
Yeah.
So he's going to be with
by
troops.
Himself?
So I think it's an exhibition by himself.
He's going to compete against soldiers, which I think, if you've ever seen a soldier's body, I don't think they've consumed many hot dogs.
No, I would say that is a fair
So
statement.
he's going to basically
skill.
step back and watch him go to town.
Did you have just 2 quick things? Zach Edey withdraws from Team Canada. He's going to focus on the upcoming season, the Memphis Grizzlies, and everything else. And then, did you see Pascal Siakam yesterday by any chance?
He was F1 in it,
He
right?
was at F1 giving out the trophy. How about that?
Now, that was in Austria?
It was, yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
It was.
Cool
I was
there.
just wondering, George Russell won the race. I actually did watch a nice amount of that. Had
Boy,
some money.
You must have been bored as hell.
Well,
if you were watching
listen.
that.
So here's what happens. I'll break down the Sunday morning. My wife goes to yoga. It's very nice outside. It's like 70 degrees. It's sunny. It's got the nice breeze. So I took the boy out, and I pop on the iPad. He loves watching. He'll watch racing or anything else. So you pop on F1. It keeps his. It kept his attention for 10 minutes.
He's a big Lando Norris fan.
So, yeah, he's a big Lando fan. Who, by the way, him and Max wrecked each other in the final couple laps. Wrecked each other and knocked them both right out of the race.
Has Nikki ever tried to get you to do yoga with her?
No, she would. That's her time.
And she's just like, there's no way he's going to do yoga.
Oh, I've done yoga
Have
before.
You? Downward dog?
Yeah, I'm not.
I don't even know anything else.
I'm not good at it. When we had COVID. Remember when everyone was locked in their home for a while? So all that stuff was closed?
I'm with
we
you.
did a little yoga.
I'm with you, Maddie. It's that's her time. She loves it, but boy, if I tried to do it, it'd be 911 immediately.
Well, she wouldn't want me to join.
Well, you and your back, you're not doing any downward dog.
I'd be stuck in a position that I couldn't get out
If I came to her, it's like, yeah, I want to join you and do partner yoga. She would tell me to get out of here. This is her hour and 15 minutes away from me and away from the sun, away from everybody.
Just mess with her and buy a mat and just like hold it when she opens the door. Like, I'm coming with you.
We have enough mats at home. We have about 7 mats.
There you go.
Okay.
Now, we've got a big one tonight on the pitch, right?
Team USA.
Is this homeboy trying to keep his job?
I think so.
I
think a lot of people want him gone.
Do people want him to keep his job?
No, everyone wants him gone.
So do we cheer for the loss
I don't know.
thinking to the next World Cup, or do we hope that we upset Uruguay or Uruguay?
I go Uruguay.
Okay.
I as well.
I'll
But
go
I
with
feel
that.
like that's American ugliness that we're pronouncing
Yeah,
it the
no,
wrong way.
No, we couldn't be more
No,
Southern
I mean,
Indiana
listen,
right now.
Team USA,
They have to win tonight to get out of their group. I believe win.
out of their group.
In all likelihood, because whatever, the other match, Bolivia and I forget who the hell's playing, Panama
Really
or
breaking
somebody.
this down.
Yeah.
It is Panama. That's pretty good.
Panama's going to advance in all likelihood, or they're going to get a result, and we've got to upset Uruguay. And it's late, 9 o'clock. I am going to tune in.
Now, did you happen to see?
And
so
Tim
that's-
Way's out, right? Because he got a red card.
Yeah,
and
because he punched a guy in the back of the head,
Yeah.
which you can't do apparently. I mean, come
No.
on, what are you doing? No, a Team USA fans just love to complain about the coach. It literally doesn't matter who the coach is. They don't want to blame substandard players, so they blame the coaching. That's what happens. Did you happen to see in the Euro Cup? Did you happen to see any of the scenes from England?
Oh, that was wild.
So-
Jude, right? He did the bicycle kick.
Well, yeah. So they were down. What was it? 1-0. They were down 1-0. I think it was.
And they always choke in
And
these
they
tournaments.
always choke, and they were done. I think it was Slovakia that they were down to, and it
Yeah,
was over.
that was epic.
And in the final 7 minutes of stoppage time, they scored 2 goals.
Yeah, Harry Kane got the header.
And all they did was show the pubs in England, and that does look like a pretty cool scene.
Now, what about the pubs in Slovakia? You imagine
Well-
their reaction to the upset?
They didn't show those. No, I
Okay,
would
so
imagine
we're at,
some sadness.
We're at Arrowhead tonight.
Is that where it's at? Oh, that'd be a good scene. That'll be a good scene.
So Greg
Kansas City loves their
Berhalter,
soccer.
and feel free, soccer fans, to reach out. Is he coaching for his job tonight?
I would say he probably is coaching for his job.
No,
And then-
wasn't he the coach, and then he was left because whatever, Claudia Reyna this, or I don't, Gio Reyna that. God,
No,
it
that
seems
I
like a
don't
soap opera.
that I don't
you remember
remember.
that? They like
No.
weren't playing them because, and then the parents like reached out on social. I don't know.
Oh, you had parents reach out?
Yeah, it was
Oh,
like
my
Kyle
goodness.
Filipowski stuff.
I'm watching one of the pubs react to this thing, and this guy's jumping on a billiard table, and this other guy just pulls another man's pants down, and it is just wild.
What? Is this real?
Yeah, I'll
Are you
retweet
sure?
it, but yes.
It's basically just dudes pouring beer on each other. That's basically all it was after they won 2-1.
I was
do love
focusing
the
on the
pub
guy on the
shots.
billiard table, and another guy just starts pantsing his friend and just pulling his pants down.
I do love the pub shop.
Oh,
Gino says
goodness.
cheer for the win. Berhalter isn't going anywhere.
All right,
Well,
that's fine.
If you lose ugly, right?
But even if he does go somewhere, it doesn't matter. It's just rinse and repeat. Like, I don't know what to tell you. It'd just be a guy.
get Rakestraw on the sidelines.
You'll get mad at the next guy. It won't matter. No. Rakestraw will be the most hated man in America if he becomes Team
Especially
USA
the
soccer
on-soil
coach.
World Cup, you know.
Oh,
the,
my
The World
God.
Cup in our own backyard, yeah.
I hate to say, but there's no way we're not going to just choke our way right out of that one.
Hey,
but anyway,
at least we're qualified, right?
Hey,
Because
hey,
we're hosting.
Hey, we don't have to do anything. You're right. Yeah, we don't have to beat Jamaica in the middle of the night to get in. So I'm good with that. All right, let's take a break. We'll keep the free agency stuff going. Obi Toppin, 4 years, $60 million with the Pacers. We'll talk about it next. It's a Monday here. Wake up call 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
Alex Golden talking Pacers with us in 20. The news of the night NBA-wise in the wee hours of the morning. 4 for 212. Do I have that right? 4 years, $212 million.
Correct. That's the max. Yep.
That is Paul George.
It's pretty good.
Off to the 76ers. Who do you fear more next year, Knicks or Sixers, if you are the Pacers?
That's easy for me, the Knicks. The Knicks have grit. I know OG Anunoby is often injured. I guess I would trust Jalen Brunson and company. I think they have a better coach. I just don't care. Philly, to me, they just don't do it for me, man. I mean, Paul George is not going to play. What's he going to play? 50-some-odd games? And then, I mean, Joel Embiid, look at what they've tried next to Joel Embiid. They've tried Ben Simmons. They tried Ben Simmons and Jimmy Butler. They've tried Harden, Maxey, and now they'll have Maxey and Paul George. They've tried quite a bit, different options to put next to Joel Embiid, and it just hasn't worked. So if you're going to ask me to buy into Philly, I'm just not buying into Philly. I buy into New York more than Philly. You agree?
Do you?
I'm just not as high on
probably
Paul George.
A little bit more. I've always been a little bit more of a Paul George guy than most in this market. I'm probably a little bit more open-minded, but the Sixers have just got a small margin for error, just health-wise. You're banking on Embiid and Paul staying healthy, and obviously, there's been moments in their careers where they have been, but still, what did Paul play last year? If you want to look at it, Paul was healthy last year, so he'll be hurt this year.
He played 74 games.
Right.
The 4 years
that's more than Halliburton played.
Yeah, the 4 years before, he had played it averaged out to about 50 games.
Yeah. So, again, that's a lot to bank on, but I do think it's kind of an interesting comparison of the two teams. One is more on the depth and the youth, and the other is a little bit more on the, hey, we've got the big three. Do you view those two teams, though, on a tier different than Indiana?
Okay, so this is the biggest problem. It's probably a bigger discussion. I think Pacer fans are going to have to come to an understanding on what everyone individually thinks about their run to the Eastern Conference Finals. That's a fair thing to say.
Right.
Giannis being out, Dame being out, and being hobbled in a couple games. It matters. So I go back to. If they beat Milwaukee, let me ask you this. This is probably a better question. If Giannis and Dame are healthy and the Pacers lose the opening round series, even if it's in 7 games, or if they get to the New York series and OG Anunoby's not hurt, Brunson doesn't get hurt at the end, and the Knicks win that series, are we as open to team run it back as I think the majority of us are?
The short answer is no.
And I think the answer to that is probably no. And so then we're like, okay, then it's the, making the Eastern Conference Finals, I think nationally will be seen as smoke and mirrors. Do you not feel that way nationally?
I do. Now, I also sit here and realize the Pacers, from where they were at building-wise entering this year, different than
Total
Philly.
agreement.
And I would even argue different than New York, considering – I know the Anunoby trade happened mid-season, but just where Randall's at, he'd probably be the one that stands out the most. We had Chad Buchanan on the show Friday. For those that missed it, it's up on our podcast. Pacers GM, always enjoy our conversations with Chad. And, we asked him, even at the time, because he said to us, we're hopeful Obi Toppin comes back. Well, if that happened, which it has happened, 4 years, $60 million for Toppin, then that means team run it back is probably going to be how we view this offseason. Here was Chad Buchanan on running it back.
Yeah, I think that's where we're at right now. I think that was the intention all along. Once the season ended, as we watched this team in the playoffs, we saw how much they enjoy playing with each other, how they complement each other. The fit with Coach Carlisle's philosophy was there. And, we got a lot of young guys that are still developing. I think it's easy to think that, hey, this is your team, this is what you're going to be next year. And you hope that you have the same chemistry, which I think we will if we bring the group back. But young players that are still playoff experience helping them. And, keeping Pascal here moving forward is important to us. So having him for a full training camp is going to be great for us, and getting Tyrese back healthy. So we feel like this group, there's still upside and growth left to it. And when you have a good locker room and guys enjoy playing with each other and they have defined roles, you're very, very careful to not want to disrupt that, because one move can really alter that and really have drastic impact on your team.
Chad just said upside and growth. I agree wholeheartedly with that. I think he's right. I do think there's upside and growth in running it back, whereas some run it back mantras are just a bunch of 30-year-old dudes, and you're just trying to keep the glue on the house, if you will, for another year. My question would be: is there upside and growth defensively?
I know you keep going back to that,
and I mean, trust me,
I just
I'm
don't see it.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying? I don't know. I don't
Because
know how
when he
much
was
better
asked the
they can be.
defensive question, it was more of, we got to get one more loose ball. We got to get one more rebound. It's not like, hey, we think, whatever, Jarris Walker can, insert himself in the lineup and guard some of these guys. Now, when you do ask about Walker, he uses the phrase, we want him to be a forceful guy. We want him to do a little bit more of the dirty work. And like, all that sounds good. It's just, how does that look? That's the question that I have.
Let me ask you this. So Halliburton's locked up, and Siakam's locked up, and Obi Toppin's locked up, and TJ McConnell is going to get something this offseason. So those four guys are going to be locked into your system a couple more years with Neesmith. We'll see what happens with Andrew Nembhard. I guess I was conditioned a couple weeks ago to think they were going to offer him about $17 million a year, and now it looks like there's a chance maybe he bets on himself. He plays for about $2 million a year this season, and then he says, hey, I can hit free agency. I can start for somebody else. Of course, I think he's going to start here and everything else. How much of their success, KB, is going to come down to, Pritchard and Buchanan, and it's Buchanan there, obviously, can still tell us, hey, we have young players that are developing. Philadelphia doesn't have that for the most part. They went out.
Maxey is still a very good young player.
Again,
Let's not discredit him.
But he could. How much? He's going to get better. I would agree. But the money that they have put in,
you could even say Maxey's Halliburton.
Okay, sure. That's fine. I have no problem with that. But they put money into Paul George, who's going to be 35 this season.
Sure.
They put the money into Joel Embiid or Kelly Oubre, guys that, for the most part are finished products in the NBA. You very well know what you're going to get. For Buchanan or anybody else to put out there, the thought that we still have young players that are developing, that's the carrot in front of everybody while they sign all these guys, is that we're going to sign this team around young players, but our young players still have growth. And while that, is going to mean Tyrese Halliburton, even though he's making a max deal, that could mean Andrew Nembhard. We'll see, again, what type of money he gets. My question would be, how much of their success in the next couple years is going to come down to those young players? Because they have signed guys to big money that are bench guys. Obi Toppin is a bench player making big money. Okay, we still have young guys. Great. How much are the young guys going to be valuable for this team going forward? Like, how much are you relying on, and we keep going back to the two names, Matherin and Wallace, to be, let's face it, above average NBA players?
I hate to discredit that thought, but Lord Smoke just chimed in here in the YouTube
what Lord
chat.
Smoke say?
He goes, KB,
It's a great
yoga
name.
is more exhausting than running a marathon.
Well, how long are you doing yoga? Not an hour of yoga.
That seems like an aggressive take, right?
Yeah, like a marathon's what, 26 miles?
26.2. You know that because people
Give
put
me
those
yoga.
stickers
Say,
on
if
their
you give me
cars.
yoga-
Driven behind a car that says 26.2 on the back, Mark?
No.
I mean,
I see other ones that are like 14. I'm like, what is this?
Look, yoga, there's no chance in hell that I could survive 1 hour in a hot yoga room. If they asked me to get in certain positions, they'd have to, call the ambulance. But what, harder than a marathon? What?
Yeah, give me yoga all day.
I'm not following that.
Well, again,
is that true? Is that a thought?
Again, it takes.
Does Nikki believe that?
I don't know. It takes how many hours though to do a marathon?
Well, stress on the hours for us three.
Yeah, the hours. Are you doing yoga for those same hours? I guess that's what I'm saying. Are you putting the hours that you would put into a marathon up against yoga or another type of exercise? You do use muscles in yoga that the normal person doesn't use, but you're also talking about running 26.2 miles.
Did you guys ever do the presidential fitness test
of
back in
course.
the day? God,
Yep.
I would fail that so bad.
What is it?
It was like I felt like Mark. It was mainly stretching. I know there were some other activities
It
involved.
was like
in
the
it.
box against the wall, and you had to try
they
to
would
reach
pull
as
out
far
the
as you
box, and you'd have to, reach,
Oh, yeah.
down your whatever, your legs. Oh my gosh.
Who do you think could do the wall sit longest at the Fan?
Oh, that's a good question.
I mean, we're doing a golf tournament
Yeah.
and a pickleball tournament. Maybe we need to do this. Maybe.
Jake would probably vote for
Maybe the
himself.
presidential fitness test needs to be done by whoever finishes last in the fantasy league this
The
year.
wall sit, I always would start out with the wall sit being like, this is a breeze, and then you get about 20 seconds in.
And then you're thinking this is
Damn.
not a breeze any
I'm
longer.
going down.
Here. Yeah.
Are they still doing the presidential
No,
fitness test?
no
I don't
I have
know.
to ask that.
Some
with
parent had to have complained.
I was
and
about to
they-
say, with what we've been through the last couple of years with our president, I'm asking, are they still doing that to our president?
Well-
Doesn't feel like that's the case the
Easy
last
now.
couple
I
times.
would
Different
I know.
standards is what you're
ban
saying.
books and ban the presidential fitness test. It seems like a campaign some people have run on, right?
Oh, goodness.
Alex Golden will save us in 10
Oh,
minutes.
goodness. Yeah, we'll get to Alex Golden. More Pacer talk. We'll wrap up hour number 2 next.
What can the Pacers do left with the very minimal amount of cap space they have? We'll throw that to Alex Golden coming up here in 5 minutes. Reminder, we're continuing to give away our pair of tickets to see Jelly Roll. That would be in November at Gamebridge Fieldhouse. We'll do that here. Mark, you said that is all 3 shows this week, Monday through Wednesday?
Monday and Tuesday.
Monday and Tuesday for Jelly Roll. Again, we're off Thursday and Friday. Andy Sweeney, I know you had something you wanted to get to.
I just quickly, I write down funny things that can relate back to what we talk about. So I had a buddy who was in Vegas. It was the UFC. Pay-per-view thing. Now, did you know that Dana White, he runs this slap championship where the people slap each other in the face? Are you aware of this? I'm sure you've seen it on Twitter maybe before.
Sounds like what Max does to Rosie.
Wait, you haven't seen this, Mark?
No.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, it would be on like After Impractical Jokers.
Oh,
or
yeah,
something.
but these
on True TV.
But these
Something like
two
that.
huge dudes or even women, they line up across from each other and they slap each other, and somebody gets knocked out, essentially. And so they went to that.
This is happening on playgrounds around every junior high in America.
Here's the reason I bring it up.
Let me kick you where it hurts.
Here's the reason I bring it up. He was there at the slap championship and he put a picture out. I'm on Instagram Friday night, and do you guys remember Will Levis's ex-girlfriend? I think her name's Gia Duddy. Do you guys remember this at all?
Gosh,
She put a
I remember about Levis is the banana.
settle
eating
down.
the banana and putting the mayo in the coffee.
Settle
Was this
down.
the girlfriend that he gave the mayo in the coffee to?
This was that girl, okay?
Okay.
Now they've since broken up, okay?
Geo Duddy?
Gia Duddy, okay? I can't believe you don't know. It's our lives are different when we leave here because I know way too much probably about her whereabouts.
I'm Googling her right now.
She was on Instagram, Mark, and she put a picture. My buddy, was sitting like 8 seats away from her at the slap championship. And I'm like, you need to say something to her. You covered Levis for a number of years at Kentucky football. You need to say something to her. He sat there for 3 hours, didn't say a word to her.
You think she wants to talk about her ex to a stranger? I
Didn't
don't
say
think
a
so.
word to her. I mean, come on.
Hey, here's
What
my
are we doing?
icebreaker.
You better.
Boy, I'm sorry things didn't work out with William.
You better watch out on some of the things you.
I'm
you
scrolling
Google
on the
there.
gram right
Because
now.
they had a video that got released and then it got taken back and then they had a video.
255,000 followers for Miss Duddy.
Anyway, so welcome to my Instagram. Let's take a break. Alex Golden, back to Obi Toppin talk. We'll do it next. 9
Lives
o'clock
quite
hour.
the life, this lady.
9 o'clock hour here as we start the month of July. I'd say NBA fireworks a little tame so far, and we might just be done with anything serious from a Pacers standpoint. To chat more about that, Alex Golden, Setting the Pace, a great listen for Pacers fans out there. That is the podcast. Alex joins us now. Let's, I guess, start there, Alex, on the back end of this all. With the limited amount of cap space left for Indiana, how would you like to see them operate here in the coming days as they fill out the back end of their roster?
Yeah, I mean, looking at this roster now and looking at what they have available to them, it's not much money before they get into the tax. So I think they're going to do everything they can to avoid that. The only thing I really see as a position of need is probably third-string center with Jalen Smith opting out. So unless they make some kind of splashy trade, which I don't really think's in the playing cards right now, I think that maybe addressing the backup center spot could be something that they look to do, but I don't know how soon they'll do that. So they've got time for a third-string center to be on the market. But other than that, I think with bringing back Obi and bringing back Pascal, it seems like they're pretty much done.
By the way, we'll get back into Pacers, but just for both of you and Alex Golden joining us here, Tyrese Maxey has agreed to a 5-year extension there in Philly, $204 million max contract. The back end of that contract, no options. It's all fully guaranteed, so there's no team option or player option at the back end of that. We were talking so much about when Maxey would sign, and so there's the news coming down from Woj in the last 3 minutes or so. Alex, let me ask you this. I want to get to specifically to Obi Toppin here in a second, but how does this team get better defensively with what they've done or what they've not done thus far this offseason?
Yeah, I mean, they haven't really brought anybody that's going to be a defensive changer, so I think that that's where you just have to really hope that the guys internally can get better. And I think we saw them take strides, but one player I think that we really didn't get to see a chance play much last year is Jarris Walker. And when I've talked with Chad Buchanan on the podcast, whether he's talked on here, I think there's a lot of excitement for what he can become. So if he can somehow get into the rotation a little bit more next year and really be just start to develop and show signs of development in the defensive side of things, I think that's going to really help their perimeter defense. But, you know, it's going to have to be internal growth, and you're going to have to see guys like Tyrese Halliburton become more of a better defender. I know people don't like to talk about that as much, but he cannot be a liability like he was last season, especially in the playoffs. Like, he's going to have to really step up. I think he took some strides last year in the playoffs too. But Nembhard, I mean, we know he's got defensive capabilities as well as Nesmith, but Siakam, I think he's got to take a step forward defensively. I think that honestly, it all just comes down to internal growth, and that's the only way that you can expect them to get better defensively.
And he's Alex Golden. Setting the Pace is the podcast. Alex Golden, NBA on Twitter. I want to go back to some of the numbers. I know we're nerding out here a little bit, but I feel like people are curious about this stuff. How much cap space do the Pacers have? Let's start there. And then what is that penalty, Alex, if they do dip into the tax, which is obviously a very foreign thing for us to even talk about with the Pacers?
Yeah, I mean, Tony East is the one that really knows this stuff like the back of his hand. I mean, he's great at it. So I'm still trying to figure out all this first apron, second apron stuff. It's really interesting. The Pacers are quite a bit away from the second apron. I think based on Bobby Marks' projected cap space after the Obi Toppin signing and the Siakam signing, they were around $167 million. The tax is around $171 million. So they still have their non-taxpayer mid-level that they can use. But I think if it does go into the tax by using that signing, they have to pay more money into the tax. And the Pacers have been a team that's notoriously avoided paying the tax. So that's why I don't think they'll probably use that mid-level exception this season to do anything significant with it, just because they don't want to jump into the tax threshold, which is around $171 million projection-wise. So that to me is pretty much all I can give you, KB, in terms of like what the exact penalties are, because I'm not sure. But I know like a lot of people have said that the first apron, which is around $178 million, if you were to be a first apron team, it's not as bad as it seems. Like, it's pretty much similar to a tax-paying team. There's a little bit more restrictions you have on you, but that second apron is where everybody wants to avoid. And if you get into that, you're really limited to what you can do. You can't do sign-in trades. You can use any of the exceptions besides like veteran minimums and things like that. So it does put a very significant stronghold on you with what you can do if you get into the second apron. But the Pacers are far away from that. But in terms of cap space, Indiana is over the cap, so they have no cap space. I know there was some talks out there about, if they would have let Obi Toppin go and they would have not signed or not guaranteed McConnell's contract, they would have had about $40 million in cap space. That was just inaccurate information that was put out there. So I think that everybody that's following along, just when Indiana basically brought in Pascal Siakam, that took away all their cap space moving forward.
Okay. Gosh, first apron, second apron. I'm just like picturing cooks in a kitchen. This is just, it just confuses the hell out of me, frankly.
It's so confusing.
Okay, so they have the non-tax exception. That is like just south of 13 million. Is that correct?
That is correct. And I saw Bobby Marks, like he mentioned something on Twitter. He does a great job covering all this stuff, like really trying to break it down. But something along the lines of like if the Pacers, they can't get into the tax and still use that exception, I don't think so. They would have to make another cost-cutting move. So that's why I don't think they'll use that. They have the biannual, which is around 4.9, which is kind of close to where they're at range-wise, how much space they have. I know Kendall Brown's on a non-guaranteed contract, so they could definitely cut him and use some of that money there. But it's very nerdy. It's very hard to explain without really getting into the nitty-gritty of it. And I feel like every time I explain it, I end up losing myself.
Yeah.
Trying to get into all the weeds. It's a very complex thing, but you're right. The aprons are where it does get very confusing as well. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that are still trying to figure this out with how things are playing out and you know what's to come. Like this is part of the reason why the Clippers didn't want to bring back Paul George, because it would have made them a second apron team, which would have limited their ability to make a lot of moves moving forward.
Okay, one more on the nerd front, I promise, before we move on, because I brought up that non-tax exception of $12.9 million because I'm like, oh, you could get a decent player, obviously, at that. I mean, Obi Toppin just was 4 years and $60 million. But given the Pacers' makeup right now, Alex, there's not going to be players that would necessarily of that quality that would want to come here because there's no playing time, correct?
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, Indiana, I don't see how they're going to have significant playing time for anybody that they bring in. You know, there was talks yesterday about Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, like the Pacers had interest in him, but like that would have had to be a sign-and trade, but you can't do a sign-and trade with Denver because they're a second apron team. So that eliminated that. Now you're talking about that $13 million or $12.9 million. Well, he just got $22 million from Orlando, so there was no way they were ever going to get in on that. I think Michael Scotto did mention that Indiana did have interest in Haywood Highsmith, who was, I think he started for quite a few games for the Miami Heat last year and kind of developed there and grew. But I don't know how serious that interest is. That could be someone that they maybe bring in. But, like, with what you already have on the roster is Haywood Highsmith. He might help you a little bit defensively, going back to Andy asking how they can get better defensively. But I just don't really see, is he worth an investment that you're going to take away playing time from other guys if you want to get playing time at the positions the Pacers already have filled with so many young guys. So, yeah, I think that probably at this point it just makes sense to kind of stay pat with what they have and not get too invested in getting more contracts on the books, because you got to think about the future of this team. I know the cap's going to go up, but when you start having to pay Mather and Nembhard all these extensions, it's going to add up and you're going to become a tax-paying team very quickly.
Alex Golden joining us, Setting the Pace podcast. We're talking some Pacers, obviously. Not late last night. Yesterday, you saw the 4-year deal to Obi Toppin for $60 million. What do you make about Obi Toppin being back in general, Alex? Do you like it? Do you like the 4 years for $60 million? And I haven't seen anyone kind of be negative about this deal at all. Is there anything that maybe bothers you about Obi Toppin getting about $15 million per season?
No, not really. I think it made a lot of sense because of how well Obi Toppin fit in here, not just with his play on the floor, but just what he meant locker room-wise, personality-wise. He just kind of fits the mold of this team. But, Caitlin Cooper does a great job covering the Pacers. She said, I think Obi Toppin's the first Pacer in history to have 100 made threes and 100 dunks in one season. And that's kind of like a great description of how the Pacers want to play. They want to play at the paint and shoot a lot of threes. So he clearly fits what they're doing. I felt like $15 million, annual average salary was about the max that I would give him. I was thinking more along the lines of maybe $13 to $14 million per year, but I'm not going to lose a guy that was that important to my rotation over $5 or $6 million over a 4-year contract. So I think it was smart by Indiana to do it. And I said this probably a couple times ago on this pod, or on this radio show, but I do think that Obi Toppin's contract is very tradable as well. And I think that the Pacers, if they do want to make a bigger splash, they have to get more contracts that they can afford to move. And I think while you don't want to necessarily just sign a guy to trade him, if a guy becomes available, I think you'd be willing to part with a backup power forward and throw some other salaries in there to make a deal happen. So that to me is another interesting part of the Obi Toppin contract, because they don't have a lot of contracts they can move to make up some big salaries aside from starters like Turner and Neesmith. So that to me is where I think it is a little bit more beneficial than people realize. But I just think he's a really good player, and I think he fits his team.
And Alex Golden, Setting the Pace is the podcast. Great listen there, especially during the offseason, because obviously there's tons of this that you can throw against the wall. Alex joining us here on the Payless Liquors Hotline. Let's go back to Thursday in the draft. Johnny Furphy there at 36, the wing out of Kansas. Tristan Newton reminds me of some Andrew Nemhard, just in his versatility in the backcourt out of UConn. And then Enrique Freeman out of Akron, kind of a small ball center that will probably be asked to play the 3 or the 4 at the NBA level. Just overall Pacers draft thoughts, Alex.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the fact that they got Johnny Furphy in round 2, around 35, 36, was great. Did not expect him to be there. This was a guy people were talking about as a 18 to 20. That's where they had him projected a lot in a lot of mock drafts that I saw was the 18 to 20 range. So the fact that he fell all the way to 35, he's 19 years old. Not going to probably play right away, so that gives him plenty of time to develop him. He is super young. Probably will spend a lot of time in the G League, but 2 or 3 years from now, Indiana might be in a spot where they really need him to step up. So if you watch any of his film, just little clips on YouTube, you can just see how good of a shooter he is, how well he moves without the basketball. Not really an on-ball guy, but I like the way he fits there. And then, of course, Tristan Newton, an experienced guy, won back-to-back championships at UConn. Like him a lot. I think that it was interesting to kind of see how all over the board he was in terms of projections for the NBA game. But a lot of people like this pickup by Indiana, and I think with having the extra two-way spot that they have now in the NBA, being able to have 3 guys on two-way deals, it made a little bit more sense for why the Pacers did take both him and Freeman back-to-back at 50-51 or 49-50, whatever it was. But I think for Tristan Newton, we know that T.J. McConnell probably isn't going to go anywhere, but I think it is a little bit of Andrew Nembhard insurance if they do lose Nembhard in free agency in the next couple of years. Hopefully he can develop and become a point guard that they can rely on maybe as a third-string guy. Enrique Freeman, not really sure exactly what he's going to become in the league, if he becomes anything. But guys drafted that late, if they can just stick on a two-way deal for a little bit, maybe get a standard contract, I think that's a win-win. Great rebounder. Obviously, Indiana needs to get better there. There's some people that think and have already given hot takes on Twitter saying he could make the Pacers 15-man roster by the end of the season. I don't necessarily know if I see that with him yet, but really cool story, and I think a good guy to invest in just to see what he can become.
Alex, I had you on Indiana Sports Talk on Friday. You think there's a chance Furphy actually could make the 15-man roster, right?
No, I definitely do. I think that it makes more sense than putting him on a two-way deal just because of the guys they currently have now. They sent a qualifying offer to both Jackson and Tshiebwe. So those guys are restricted free agents. They can bring them back on two-way deals, which would leave you only one really spot there for a two-way unless they do promote Oscar Tshiebwe to the 15-man roster as well and make him the third-string center behind an Isaiah Jackson and a Miles Turner, which wouldn't shock me, but I don't know if that's what I would assume they'll do, but I could see them doing it. And that to me is where I think Johnny Furphy, put him on a standard contract, probably similar to an Andrew Nembhard's contract that he got 2 years ago. Maybe you don't pay him as much, but I definitely think that he is a player that should be on the 15-man roster because they do have a roster spot, whether it's cutting Kendall Brown and they bring him in, that could make some sense to me. But no McDermott. I think that could be kind of your McDermott replacement on a much cheaper contract.
Alex Golden joining us. We're talking some Pacers, some NBA free agency. Setting the Pace, that's the podcast. Go ahead and download that. Watch it on YouTube. Some good stuff there. You know, we had Chad Buchanan on Friday. And listen, these guys talk all the time, whether it be he, Pritchard, Carlisle on with us, whatever it may be. And you know, young guys developing, that continues to be the narrative. And we know, Nembhard can get better. And listen, I know Tyrese Halliburton can get better. But usually that's kind of a Nembhard, it's a Jarris Walker, it's a Benedict Mathurin type of discussion. When you hear, the next step here is still internal improvement, young guys getting better, what does that mean to you? What comes to your mind first?
Yeah, it means that, okay, well, we're really banking on them getting better, which is great. But if they don't, where does that put the Pacers, right? It's a little bit more of a question mark because you invested a lot in high draft picks, high lottery picks, especially with Jarris and Benedict. And we saw how far this team made it last season in the playoffs without either of them. So if you add both those guys and they develop how you would like to see them develop, that's great. You're feeling like, wow, this could actually be something special. But if they don't, now you're in a heap of trouble. And that, to me, is where I get a little bit nervous because you don't really know what their value is technically yet across the league. I know teams have been calling and asking about both Mathurin and Walker. And I think part of that is just because Indiana had such success without those two guys in the rotation. Mathurin's going to be coming up here for a payday soon. I think that there's still plenty of room for him to grow. And I think that him not playing actually was a benefit to him being able to see what was out there, what maybe he can learn from those games and not being on the floor. So knowing what works is what's really important for him. But I think Jarris' development is just going to be huge for this team moving forward. They desperately need a 6'7" guy that can play the wing, can defend other players. And we heard Chad Buchanan say several times that sometimes Aaron Nesmith is just a little bit too small for the Jason Tatums, the Jaylen Browns of the world. So if you're able to hopefully develop Jarris into that spot, now you're feeling pretty good about it. But you see the rest of the East is getting better by bringing in talent that's a little bit more established. You kind of know what they are. With Indiana, it's still a little bit of a mystery box. And while a mystery box can be fun to see what you got in there, it also can be a little bit of a disappointment. So I'm hoping that they have a good sense of how these guys can develop. I think the guys on the roster have already done a good job of developing under Carlisle and his coaching staff. But you're hoping that you can get an all-star level player out of those guys that you drafted, at least out of one of the two, whether it's Mathurin or Jarris, but preferably both, considering that you did draft them so high in the lottery. So that, to me, is how I feel about it. But I just don't think that I'm ready to move on from either of them yet to make a big splashy trade because I feel like Indiana's kind of in two different time zones, or they're in two different time frames here with the Siakam older group, McConnell, Turner, that group, and then you still got the young guys with Halliburton, Mathurin, Nembhard, Jarris that could be here for a long time. So I just think that it'd be too early to punt on those guys unless somebody crazy became available.
All right, Alex, we'll end with this. My handwriting is horrific. I just sketched this out as I was listening to you, trying to make, who right now, July 1, and I get, a lot of stuff can still change. But let's go with 8 playoff teams in the East. Boston, Knicks, Sixers, Cavs, Pacers, Magic, Bucks, Heat. If I asked you to tier those teams out, would you go Boston on tier 1? What would tier 2 look like? And what would tier 3 look like?
Yeah, that's really funny you asking that because I was thinking about it last night myself. I'm like, this is kind of an interesting dynamic. I think
it's a
there are 8
conference,
teams in the
man.
Eastern Conference. The 7 teams that you didn't mention all feel like they're probably not going to make the top 8. Like, it just feels like this is your top 8,
right?
And it would be a shocker if anybody else made it. So I think Boston's got to be in a tier by themselves. I know that Philly made the Paul George trade, but he's getting a little bit older. Can he stay healthy? Embiid's health is always a question mark with him, and that's part of the reason why as much as you want to believe in Philadelphia, it's hard to believe in them when you know that Embiid can go down at any moment with a injury that can be so devastating to them. So I would say tier 1, you definitely got Boston. Tier 2, with the Knicks adding Mikal Bridges, I think that you probably got to put New York, Milwaukee, and Philly in that group because I think people forget how great Giannis is sometimes just because not the flashiest guy, but such a dominating player. And then I think for the next tier, I'd put Indiana, Orlando, and Cleveland all in that same tier. And then I'd say around 8, I'd probably put Miami just because there's so much uncertainty. I know that Spoelstra is a great coach, but they really haven't done a whole lot. Khalil Ware is their big offseason move so far. There's a lot of question marks here with what they'll do with Jimmy Butler, right? So I just think that at this point, they're probably like that 8 seed to me in terms of tiers. But other than that, I think that's how I would view it. I think Indiana, Orlando, and Cleveland are all kind of in that. People don't really believe in them fully yet. They think that they're getting better, but they're not there yet. But I think they could really surprise some people. I do think Indiana has a chance to be a top 4 seed in the Eastern Conference this year. And I think, once again, people are already overlooking them as a team that could make it back to the Eastern Conference Finals. So, once again, I think a little bit of a chip on their shoulder is going to help them, even though I know that there'll be more people aware of what they did last year and paying more close attention to who they are as a team. But that's just how I view Indiana, especially amongst the other teams in the Eastern Conference.
Man, when you do that exercise, though, it's a pretty deep 1 through 8. I mean, even calling Miami an 8, I understand where you're going with that. It's
Yeah.
I think there are some legit 5, 6, 7 seeds that could be there coming up this season. Alex, great stuff as always, man. Setting the pace, anything to tease, plug for you guys? I'm sure it's a lot of reactionary stuff this time of year.
Yeah, so we definitely have a reaction pod to what happened yesterday in free agency, and then talked a little bit about the WWE stuff that Tyrese Halliburton was on. I talked with Andy about that on Friday night, so that was pretty cool stuff. And then tomorrow we have Aaron Neesmith on the podcast. Had about a 30-minute conversation with Aaron, and really good stuff from him. So I think if people want to check that out, that'll be available tomorrow morning, probably around 6 a.m.
You asked me this. Did you find an answer about Ben Shepherd and the Summer League?
I have not. I haven't asked anybody else. I just didn't know if Chad said it. I probably could email him and ask him, but I haven't. So I think he will play probably, right? It makes sense to let him play.
I mean,
but
Nemhard played last year, and did Matherin play? I feel like he did. Did he not?
Yeah, I think both of them played, and then they pulled Nemhard pretty early, I think, and they're like, yeah, he's too good for this. Like Halliburton said the same thing, like he shouldn't be playing in this right now. He's way too good for this. So
right.
Yeah, Nemhard's an interesting case. I know we got to get going here, but I'll just say keep an eye on his contract extension because I think could be some really interesting stuff. I mentioned this on our podcast that came out today. I'm keeping my eyes on San Antonio. San Antonio just signed Chris Paul to a 1-year deal for $11 million. That's a stopgap point guard and maybe kind of help bridge the gap a little bit. But next season, the Pacers could, not pick up Andrew Nemhard's option and make him a restricted free agent, which means I think there could be some teams that are very interested in him. And I think San Antonio is a team to look out for that could try to pry Andrew Nemhard away from Indiana because at this point in his career, I just don't see how Andrew Nemhard ever gets the reins to this Pacers team with Tyrese Halliburton here. And I think that him and Wemby would be such a great fit with San Antonio, and he feels like a Popovich type of guy. So not trying to get too many people worried, but it's just something I'm keeping my eye on.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense when you explain it like that. Alex, as always, man, thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you all so much. Have a good one.
That's a great Alex Golden right there on the Payless Liquors hotline. Again, Summer League starting a week from Friday for the Pacers. They'll take on the Nets and the T-Wolves that first weekend. Those are NBA TV games. For those that don't get NBA TV but do get the ESPN channels, you'll get a look at the Pacers then. The following week, it's Phoenix on July 16th. That's a Tuesday afternoon. And then they'll play Thursday afternoon, July 18th, ESPNU, ESPN2 for those games. They will have a fifth game, but I think as we're used to in the Summer League at times, even if you play a Shepherd or a Walker by like game 3 or 4, those guys are no longer in Vegas. Those guys, get their heavy minutes, and then you're playing the, Furfies of the world the rest of the way. So
the Furfies of the world.
I love that last name.
Leave my man Furfy alone. You want to get a Furfy jersey?
Are you a number aesthetic guy? Like, do you care what number athletes are?
Not usually. No.
So Johnny Furphy rocking 12 is good with you?
That's good. Why? Do you have a problem with that?
No.
Is there
no,
okay?
I mean,
I'm good with that. I have no problem.
When I see numbers, how do you not think back to past players? Like seeing Tristan Newton with 4, like it's just so Victor Oladipo for me.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So yeah, we'll see exactly what the Summer League roster looks like. And Scott Agnes had it last week. Lance Jones from Purdue. Beyond that, I believe I saw Josiah Jordan James from Tennessee will be on the Summer League. And then how much does Shepherd play, Walker, et cetera, Shebway, some of the two-way guys from last year. That announcement should be coming at some point this week.
Yeah, I think the storylines for me, besides a guy like Furphy, who very well could make the 15-man roster, I think you just mentioned the guys there. I mean, if there is a chance that Oscar Shebway is the third center, okay, what is his game? Like, we've seen his game, right? We've seen his game with the Pacers. We saw his game at Kentucky. So, has he grown his game at all? He is not a shooter whatsoever. And so he's interesting. And then, I know it's a summer league, but can it become I don't want to say a coming out party, but where you watch Jarris Walker and you're like, okay, he doesn't need a few weeks of summer league, right? Like he's good to go. He got a couple games in, or does he struggle at all? I think those two things are interesting. I meant to ask you, you'd be a good person to ask. For the next 2 years, okay, and I'm just giving you 2 years because Paul George is an old player. Would you rather have Paul George or Pascal Siakam?
For 2 years?
Now, I'm just giving you for the next 2 years because obviously Siakam is 30 years old and Paul George is going to be 35 years old. And Paul George has more of, I would say, we would agree, an injury histories. Also, they're different players. Siakam more mid-range and go get a bucket that way. Paul George is going to shoot a bunch of threes, but he's going to shoot about 41% from three-point range. I saw that yesterday, and I'm like, if the Pacers could have had Paul George, not for the full 4 years. You don't want to be paying him when he's 38 years old. But if you could have done a 2-year deal with him, would people here in Indianapolis, would you have rather had that than Pascal Siakam?
Well, that is a different question.
Well, but you're an interesting person to ask.
Because of the Paul disdain.
Sure, and I understand that.
I would vote for Paul, yeah. Not to act like the defense is at, whatever, an A-plus level like it has been throughout his career, or at least for a chunk of his career, but I still think he'd offer you a little bit more as a wing defender. I mean, certainly health you can't ignore with Paul, but, I kind of go back to something I've said on several occasions today. I just think for a team that has so many questions defensively, the fact that you're paying your 6'9" guys and Siakam and Toppin so much money, obviously Siakam much more than Toppin, and you don't ask them to be the defenders, that's a bummer. I think that's a big root of the Pacers' defensive issue. Obviously Halliburton, to Alex's point, is certainly that. And, I guess going down a different path for a second, because when Alex said it, I kind of thought about it. Like, when you think about Halliburton's offseason and the thought is like, oh, he's going to add strength and he's going to be a better defender. Like, some of my questions, like, when does that happen? I mean, isn't he going to Team USA next week?
Yeah, I mean,
he just started working out.
He's been on vacation. He's been rehabbing. He's been on WWE. Then he goes right and plays again. And then when he's done with that, I mean,
And the Olympic run goes to what? The end of August, I would guess. I'd probably have to look up exactly when the schedule is. But, it's going to, it's probably going to be about a month out from training camp is when he gets back from Paris, And I know you treat the international guys kind of with kid gloves when they come back, just from how much workload. But I'm like, when does he put on this weight? When is that focus going to be there? That is a question that I would have. But, yeah, I would say for a 2-year run, considering the wing and defense issues there, I would probably opt for Paul.
All PG, Paul George. I mean, he's going to make his max deal. That's going to be the biggest deal. LeBron's going to take a little bit less. James Harden signed just that that 2-year deal to stay with the Clippers. And we haven't had anything basically happen this morning. I've been trying to watch Woj. I mean, there hasn't been any big
just the
movements.
Maxey extension.
Yeah, just Maxey. But you knew that was going to happen, right? I mean, you kind of knew Maxey was going to happen at some point.
I would say the NBA world might be sleeping from the wee hours of last night, because I felt like every time I rolled over last night and looked at my phone, I was like, oh well, here's, even if it's like a Jonas Valanciunas or didn't the good Plumlee. The good Plumlee. Maybe the only Plumlee is probably.
Is it Mason? I think
Suns,
yeah,
right?
I think Mason got a 1-year deal for about
Eric
$3.5
million
million
to the Sixers.
Whatever happened to Kevin Durant? Remember, like 3 days ago, last week we talked about it, that he might be traded.
Well,
what are we doing here? Is he not moving or what?
Ask and you shall receive, right? On your news items.
Okay, do we get something? Give me something.
I would say this is just a mini Woj bomb impacting us here locally.
Okay.
Jalen Smith declined the player option for $5.4 million.
I'm seeing it
here. He signs 3 for $27 million with the Chicago Bulls. So that is something that I would say financially, even fit-wise, I would think the Bulls would have some minutes for him. I don't know. Mark, maybe you can speak to that.
They definitely have minutes to go because they don't have anybody on that team.
and
there's minutes aplenty.
Yeah, there's nobody there. They have 4 players.
We can insert plenty of Chicago Bull jokes if we want to. I described Jalen Smith's time here in Indiana earlier as like the junior high relationship. Like, there were times here where he was a key piece to what the Pacers. The dude started like 40-some games over the last 2 years.
Without a doubt.
That's a notable number.
Yep.
And, he shot the 3 ball really, really well. I think he's got decent rebounding numbers. It's just I kind of view a third center like, a running back in the NFL. It's just, where is the depth necessarily fit into that? Teams are opting to go smaller at the 4. So I think, 5-10 years ago, Jalen Smith is kind of like the ideal 4 almost. in the NBA. That's not necessarily the case there. So, Mark, I'm totally fine with your Bulls doing that.
Yeah, I mean, they need to spend money somewhere.
And I think good on Jalen Smith.
He got $9 million. I mean, it is good. Mark's not going to give you any happiness on
Well,
this.
they're not really my Bulls anymore. I've kind of disowned them.
Whatever
I don't really
happened
care
to
for them.
DeMar DeRozan? He's he's an unrestricted free agent. I was wondering why no one wants him. I know he's 35, but come on.
So, I mean,
you can
he
fill it
could
up.
have had, again, a one-year player option to probably ride the bench here for $5.4 million. And now, theoretically, he gets playing time and gets 3 years and $27 million.
All right, so I kind of feel stupid about our Jalen Smith discussion. We kind of been back and forth. Is he going to opt out or not? I had forgotten, and we talked about this during the season. I remember this. Clutch is his agency. I mean, we should have known that Rich Paul and company would not have him come back and pay, and play a 5-year or a $5 million deal. For 1 year. Clutch is not going to do that.
Nothing against Jalen Smith. I'm going to guess Rich Paul hasn't thought 1 ounce about Jalen Smith's future in the last few weeks.
Well, why not? He got LeBron done and taken care of and out of the way. He got Bronny James.
Is LeBron ever done and taken care of?
Well, you're not wrong. It's killing me. They're like, LeBron's going to take less money so they can get Klay Thompson. That just doesn't seem to add up.
Boy,
I mean, is Klay not washed? I'm struggling with it.
So are we looking at like a LeBron, Anthony Davis, and I know I'm forgetting other people on that Lakers roster, but are we looking at like a LeBron, Anthony Davis, Austin Reeves, Klay Thompson, Dalton Connect?
Probably. I mean, Rui is still there.
I forgot about Rui.
So, I don't know. I mean, one of these guys,
Vincent,
one of these guys will have to be.
Shafina?
One of these guys will have to be traded. One of them is going to have to be traded. They think it'll be D'Angelo Russell will be the odd man out if someone wants to take his contract. One more thing before I check down, and I know we had someone, I can't find it now, who tweeted this at us, and Alex brought it up, and it's one of the positive pieces of the Obi Toppin deal is that if you do come across a guy that is available. KB, you always mention this. You even mentioned this going back to the Michael Pittman discussion with the Colts, that this contract with Obi Toppin is a tradable contract. People need to remember in the NBA, you can't trade basically. There's a threshold that you have to meet where the salaries have to match up.
Yeah.
They got to match up to a certain percentage, okay? You can't trade a guy making $2 million or $4 million for a max player. So you couldn't trade Andrew Nemhard for Paul George or something like that. And you look at a guy like Obi Toppin making $15 million a year. If there was a someone available come this year at the trade deadline, next year, the year after, he would have a contract that would at least be sizable enough to match up with another superstar's contract.
It's a very good point. And, it's not something I think we need to discuss too in depth on July 1st, but we probably
But it's out there.
But no. I was going to add this. We probably should mention Miles Turner will be in the contract year. Right?
I feel like we haven't mentioned that enough.
And that's just, again, future at center. I get that it's a bit of a dying position to some, but still, I mentioned last week during the draft, if you're going to have 3 second-rounders, I'd like to see one dart at a center. None of the darts went to center. Just, it's not, I'm not going to roast and rake Chad Buchanan and Kevin Pritchard over coals for it, but it's just a thought that I have down the road because, again, financially, you think there's money here for Turner? After this one, I would say
it's a great question.
Probably no on that. All right, Jelly Roll tickets for the pop quiz in about 5 minutes, so give us a call for that, 317-239-1070. Before that, let's lead off the morning checkdown.
All right, 88-82, that's your final yesterday afternoon. The Fever go on the road, and they beat the Phoenix Mercury. What a good win. I mean, it really was a slow start for the Fever, down as many as 15, down 7 in the fourth quarter. A couple minutes ago, they come back, and they get the win. Caitlin Clark, fantastic. Again, just 1 rebound shy of that first triple-double. And post-game, head coach Christy Sides on Clark, her passing, and how she's leading the team.
My gosh, she ended up with how many assists? 12 assists. I mean, she's just a willing, incredible passer. she just finds the plays that need to happen. She understands, when the ball needs to get into the paint, and then these guys started doubling us down there, which opened up our outside, and just had some shooters out there ready to knock shots down.
Halfway through the season, 8-12 on the year. If the playoffs were to start today, KB, they would be in as the 8 seed. Up next in Vegas, taking on the Aces. That one tomorrow night, 9:30 on ESPN.
And boy, shout out to Chrissy Sides and Kelsey Mitchell there late. Great decoy play with Caitlin Clark running off the screen and got Kelsey Mitchell going to her strong hand, hit that mid-range jumper to take the lead. I mean, they were down 7 with 4 to go. Clark doesn't hit a bucket. She set up Katie Lou Samuelson and Aaliyah Boston for those big late clock threes that were huge there, but still just some pretty gritty minutes there as the Fever come back and beat the Mercury. All right, Major League Baseball from the weekend. The teams in the Midwest, they all stink or they're mediocre at best. Paul Skeens is really good. The Indians lost a bunch. They're about to be at home from July 4th to 14th. What else am I missing on the baseball front?
Nothing.
How did the Reds do this weekend? I legit they split.
with the Cardinals.
Legit did not know.
Yeah, they either scored a lot or they got shut out. I believe they had 2 hits yesterday.
Well, okay, because on Friday night, Mark, you'll love this. On Friday night, Eddie Garrison's doing the updates on Indiana Sports Talk, and we went from like the 3rd inning to like the 7th inning without anybody getting a hit. So that's the kind of baseball it was. It was 1-0, and apparently the Reds got robbed of a home run to end the game. That's a nice way to end the game.
They literally, if you look at that series, it was literally either you score or you don't. They won 11-4. They lost 1-0 on Friday night. They won 9-4, and then they lost yesterday 2-0. Is that Lance Lynn getting the win yesterday?
It was Lance Lynn. God, he's got to be how old? How old is Lance Lynn?
37. He was born in Marion. I always thought I guess he could have moved to Brownsburg, obviously, but interesting. I didn't realize that.
I did not know that. In fact, I would have had them pegged a little bit older than 37. The only other thing I had, Zach Edey withdrawing his name from Team Canada. I found to be a little bit interesting. I was looking forward to him playing for Team Canada, right? He was going to make the team, was he not? I thought he would.
The one thing Canada lacks is kind of the front court guys. Yeah. If you look at their roster, it might be good news for Trey Lyles. You talk about Indy high school guy and making that team, but Edey not playing for that, and I get where Edey's coming from, and I thought his statement, was pretty clear about I've made a commitment now to the Memphis Grizzlies, and I think Edey hears some of that chatter about, the doubts of his NBA career and wants to make sure that he takes his steps to, try and make as early of an impact as possible. And, if you're Memphis and you're viewing him as a starter, that's probably good news on your end. You'd rather have him with you than, maybe getting mop-up minutes or, not playing a ton for Team Canada.
Yeah, and I took it as well. He's had a very busy last year and a half, along with committing to the Grizzlies. With getting ready and, just playing a full season with Purdue and everything else. I just, take a little bit of a break. That seemingly is what he's going to do. Reminder, join the Fan on the Back Nine. It's the Back Nine Golf Tournament presented by Franciscan Health. It's coming up, guys. We're getting close. We're 17 days away. Thursday, July 18th. You can sign up and find more information. Check out the website, 1075thefan.com. By the way, I'll tell both of you guys, there's a new video out for that, the JMV Slice video with him and Jimmy Cook. So
I
if
haven't
you want
seen
to check,
that one yet.
Yeah, they put it on social, I think, this morning. So if you want to check that again, 1075thefan.com. All right, 239-1070. Those Jelly Roll tickets up for grabs. Pop quiz coming up next here on The Fan on this Monday. Got people hyped.
Boy, I love some good social media pettiness, especially from the team accounts. Did you see what the Fever tweeted out after the W yesterday?
I did not see that. You know I love this stuff. Tell me. Let's go. What do they?
Shout out to whoever was pulling the trigger on this one. Reality check. That, of course, in reference to Diana Taurasi informing Caitlin Clark via the media back a few months ago that she would be in for a reality check in the WNBA as the Fever best Miss Taurasi. And the Mercury yesterday, they throw out the old reality check.
Okay, so because Caitlin Clark had the migraines, the headaches, she didn't go to the podium. Okay, it was Kelsey Mitchell and Aaliyah Boston. There was one other, and I forget.
Smith,
That's it. So they sent 3 other players there, and so after the game, and we played some of the sound during the checkdowns. The only sound after the game is Caitlin Clark on with ESPN. And they asked her, it wasn't Monica McNutt, I don't think. I forget who it was. They did ask her about Taurasi. Like, obviously Taurasi's in her 40s. So, growing up, how much did you love Diana Taurasi and playing against her? And Clark did not answer the question. She basically pivoted to, it was a fun game, the crowd was great, and everything else. She did not answer a question or mention Taurasi or, give a 15-second answer on, growing up, I'm in my game after
and for
her and all
Caitlin
that.
Clark,
She didn't do any of
that's
that
like saying
stuff.
she can kiss my ass. Right? She doesn't say anything.
Listen, that's how I took it as well, that she was like, nah, Taurasi wanted to talk that talk. When we walked
Well,
out
good
here,
for
we
her.
got the dub.
I'm
How
good
about
with that.
Listen, I think Caitlin Clark actually has a lot of that.
Oh,
I think she has a ton of that.
I think Caitlin Clark internally is wired in a degree that she does not let the public know very often.
But here's the thing.
her comments.
I would agree with you. So I'm watching that game. Just one more thing on this. So I'm watching it, and the Fever win, and after the game, and there's obviously a lot of Caitlin Clark fans there. So there's a byproduct. There's a lot of red Fever shirts, and even though it's a sellout and they're playing in front of that crowd, that's why they hate her. That's why Taurasi doesn't like her. I mean, Taurasi's like, I'm a legend. I'm one of the greatest ever. But thousands aren't showing up. Caitlin Clark, who's been in the league now 20 games, she comes in and there's 17,000.
It's a very neutral atmosphere, if that, really, with some of these road games.
It's their
for the
large.
Fever.
It's the largest crowd in Phoenix for a WNBA game since 1997. Gosh, 1997.
I think tomorrow night, that's the Aces moving it to T-Mobile to get in that bigger arena tomorrow night for Las Vegas.
Should do a game in the Sphere.
On that. And NHL draft in the Sphere, right?
They already did that, yeah.
Yeah.
They went right from the
cool.
Grateful Dead to the NHL draft in the Sphere in Vegas.
There might be a hockey joke in there here for our market on that end. So, yes, love the reality check. Taurasi, for what it's worth, did take the high road after the game, but a little too late on that. All right, we got to go through this relatively quick. Jelly Roll tickets, give us a number 1 through 8.
Let's go caller number 4 today, Mark. How does that sound?
Jack.
Hey, Jack.
Yo,
Jack, you a Jelly Roll fan?
not a clue.
Okay, well, you're here to test your knowledge, and I guess maybe...
Big guy that looks like Mike Tyson.
Yeah, well, I could certainly see that there. I'm not sure if Jelly Roll would take that as a compliment or not, but nonetheless, congrats on the tickets. Good luck on the pop quiz. Andy Sweeney.
All right, question number 1, Jack. The Fever reached the midway point of their WNBA season with a win yesterday in Phoenix. Who was the leading scorer in yesterday's game? Aaliyah Boston, Diana Taurasi, Kelsey Mitchell, or Brittany Griner?
I'm going to go with Griner.
Jack, number 2 here. The Fever reached the halfway mark of the season at 8-12. In the 25-year history of the franchise, how many times have they been over 500 midway through the season? I mean, what a question.
Wow.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, Jack. 7, 9, 11, or 12?
Let's go with 7.
Well, I guess 7 would qualify as well. Do they call this a prime number? If I'm thinking back to my math days.
Oh, thanks.
You think that's going to help?
Jack.
I don't know if that's going to help
know.
Jack or not. I got to be honest.
I don't know.
It embarrassed me even more.
Jack strikes me as a guy that knows his algebra or whatever the hell you learned that in.
Yeah. Let me get my slide rule out here real quick.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you a protractor question next. It's not 7. Is it 9, 11, or 12?
Let's go 12.
Question number
No.
three. Question
Thank
number
you.
3. Joey
Still think the prime really.
I don't know. It didn't help. Joey Logano won yesterday's NASCAR Cup Series race in Nashville. Now, the race included a rain delay and a new record for overtimes as the race actually lasted 331 laps.
I love NASCAR overtime.
31 more than the scheduled 300, okay? And it also saw several contenders. They had a pit for fuel and everything else in the extra sessions. How many attempts at a green-white checkered flag finish did we see yesterday? 4, 5, 6, or 7? Good luck.
Let's go 5.
Good
How about
enough.
that? Nice, Jack. All right, Jack, which former guest of this show also currently leads the NASCAR Cup Series in driver points? Kyle Larson, Tyler Reddick, Chase Elliott, Denny Hamlin.
I've only known you had Larson on, so I'll go Larson.
I enjoyed that
Good-
interview
good
with
enough.
Kyle Larson.
Yeah, the answer is not Tyler Reddick. All right, question number 5. 120 years ago today, the first Olympics to be held in the United States opened. Where did the 1904 Olympics take place? L.A., Chicago, St. Louis, or New York?
Let's see. Let's go with Chicago.
That's not the obvious answer by
It's
any
not.
means.
No.
Boy, I would have, and
I
I'd
didn't know
like to
that.
think I know a little Olympic history, but I definitely would not have gotten that right. How about that? The only two he missed the prime number in our Olympic history.
Yeah.
He got the two NASCAR ones
He
right.
did good.
He got Brittany Griner right.
Yes!
Hang on the line, Jack.
Yeah, hang on the line.
Get those
Brittany,
Jelly Roll tickets.
Brittany Griner, 24, 5 attempts at the green-white checkered. Kyle Larson,
Loud
664
and proud.
points, 20 up on Chase Elliott. But Andy, the two slip-ups.
Yeah, the two slip-ups, what was it? The Fever have been above 500 11 times in their history, their 25-year history, 11 times. All of them occurred in the 13 seasons between 2003 and 2015. And then he missed the final one. The 1904 Olympics, they opened in St. Louis.
Should I have
How
known
about that?
I don't know. That
No,
one
I
was
don't think.
hard.
I don't think you should have known that. No, I didn't know that. I mean, I would have. I would have picked, L.A.
Scotty, Summer
something
Olympics,
like that.
over under 4.5 times has been held in the United States.
It's a good question.
How about we look that up and share that on the other side?
You want to do that on the
Yeah,
other end as a tease? We'll give you a pop quiz question that
Sure.
you don't care about. We'll do it next. We'll wrap it up. It's a Monday here on The Fan.
I think I need to move to Vegas. We said 4.5 for the U.S. hosting the Summer Olympic Games. 4. That will change to 5 once L.A. becomes the host here in 2026. You had St. Louis in 1904, L.A. in 32 and 84, and then Atlanta, of course, in 96.
Just millions of people had to be waiting on the end of that commercial break to get that answer, right?
Shout out to Indy's own Sam Pezic. I was watching last night the gymnastics. The women's team completed their 5-woman roster. She did great on the color of that with Terry Gannon. So she was obviously in the Olympics back in 2008, and she did a great job.
Yeah, well, good stuff. We'll see you guys tomorrow, 7 a.m. Podcast up after the show, 1075thefan.com.